Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year to all my fellow council and to all the people that are tuned in today in 2021. It is a new year. This is the regular meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, January 11th, 2020. We'll call it to order at 7 p.m. At this time, would everyone willing and able please join Alderwoman Pendell Charles for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. What we have seen and heard and experienced, especially over the past week, has been unprecedented. And in those unprecedented times, we need to speak in unprecedented ways. With that being said, as a result of what was put on my heart for this evening's invocation, I will be reading the Beatitudes for all of those who are in and have been in harm's way. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And my grandmother's favorite, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward. Amen.
Amen. Please join us. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Here.
Alderman Payon? Alderwoman Pendell Charles?
Here.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Present.
Alderman Shandemeyer?
Here.
Alderman Gay?
Here.
Alderman Savage?
Present.
Alderman Arnett?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
So this time I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended to include R-1-21, condemning the attack on the U.S. Capitol building on first reader, and to R-61-20, short-term rental license moratorium on second reader. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Arnett?
We have not finished committee work on R-61-20. And in fact, we're awaiting a report from Planning and Zoning. So I think that is premature to be on the agenda. And I would ask that we not place that on the agenda.
Alderman Tierney?
You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm asking for the vote on this resolution because it is a resolution and the questions that are asked is really the reason for the resolution, the moratorium, if you will, so that per the staff report, we can put a pause, a temporary pause on the issuance of these licenses while we get the information that my colleague is looking for. And that is what the resolution reads. It is a resolution. There is no need for it to go to committee review. There will be legislation. Legislation takes longer. That's why I have the resolution. It's sort of the scientific method. Put a pause on these, and then we will concurrently with the moratorium, I'll be drafting some legislation. But due to the, as I said, the increase in these applications, and as you probably got the testimony, it is imperative that we have a pause in these issuances. And I have appeased my colleague by making it a 12-month moratorium, but I'll speak to that later.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Alderman Arnett, you can
It is
respond.
not on the agenda. There are several people who would want to be here and to speak publicly if they knew were on the agenda. On the agenda, however, is a referral.
Excuse me, sir. We've got a technical difficulty.
To
Mr.
the
Mayor,
Planning Commission.
I want to try to clear up the technical difficulty.
Sorry.
Julian, could you go on mute because we're hearing the echo from the chamber? I don't know, Regina, if you could talk to Julian, because I think we're hearing. Okay.
I think that was it. Yep. I think
Okay.
you go ahead, Alderman Arnett. Sorry.
So as I said, this is totally inappropriate. There is no advance notice. There are several people who have interest in this, would be here to speak to it had they known it was going to be on the agenda. On the agenda, however, is a referral of the mission, since it was pegged to the Planning Commission and is pegged to the comp plan report as it exists now. So I think this is totally inappropriate, unfair, unwarranted to, at the last minute, put this on the agenda, and I would strongly resist that.
Is there any chance you can push it back, Alderman Tierney, or not?
As I said, I believe that a moratorium is the appropriate step to take at this time until we have a meaningful regulation in place to protect the residential quality of these neighborhoods. If you think more data is needed, then a moratorium is necessary to avoid allowing the problem to worsen before a coherent and fair policy is developed.
Okay.
We've had to go through rules, it was postponed. We had to go through finance, it was postponed. Again, this is a tool. I understand that the mayor could actually issue this directive to put a pause in the issuance of these legislations. It's been vetted by the law office. There is no reason for a delay. I wish to put it to a vote. I don't think any of us want to receive any more testimony than we already have. There's no need to postpone it any further. Let's bring it to a vote.
So I'm going to go through the council who have their hands up, and then we're going to go to Mike or Regina to get some.
Mr. Mayor, you don't have a second on this. I didn't hear a second on the motion to approve the agenda because that's where you are right now.
Sorry, who was the second?
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Alderman Pendell Charles and Alderman Paone had their hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, I think it's incumbent upon me to read this statement, which I sent as an email to my colleagues back on January the 5th, 2021. Dear colleagues, in November of 2010, my dad passed away, and in June 2015, my mom passed away. My two children, my husband and I, inherited several pieces of property from my parents in Ward 3. My son is age 38, my daughter's age 36. One of the properties are located in Ward 3. My son and daughter decided to turn this home into an Airbnb. My son has pretty much taken charge. He has filed the appropriate Airbnb paperwork with the city, and he received notification from our city's Planning and Zoning Office on Wednesday, December 16th, 2020, that the property is past inspection and that the approval letter is forthcoming in the mail, and we did receive the approval letter last week. Therefore, as of December 16th, I have not responded to any emails regarding STRVs, Airbnbs, etc., since I'm part owner of this property. And also, I am hereby indicating that I will be stating on the record here in open session that I will be recusing myself from any deliberations or votes or discussions regarding short-term rentals and the like. This was CC'd to the mayor as well as our Director of Planning and Zoning and our city manager. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I saw Alderman Paone next, then Alderman Savage, then Alderman Chandler-Meyer. Could I unmute you, Fred?
Was this referred to the Planning Commission? It's my understanding that it was. And we don't have a report of any kind from them. Is that the case?
Regina?
That's why it's on the agenda tonight. Alderman Arnett requested that it be referred to the Planning Commission.
Well, Well, look, I've certainly got all the information I need. I think that we've heard from both sides. I mean, I'm ready to vote. If we're supposed to have a report from the Planning Commission, we ought to have it. But, you know, if you just referred something to the Planning Commission last week, this thing's been kicking around for months. I think I'm ready to go forward without them. If it's already been referred and they have a report coming our way at some point, that's a little different. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I also just feel by the nature of this resolution, the moratorium, there is a time sensitivity, especially once we look at the data that was given to us in the staff report, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But it clearly shows there's a problem with a vast majority of these permits popping up in the C1 and C1A conservation districts. So I think we need to really, if we're going to do this, we need to take action sooner rather than later. Yeah, so I think this is completely entirely appropriate to do tonight.
Alderman Schnittlmeyer.
Mr. Mayor, I am going to echo the sentiments of my colleagues, Alderwoman Tierney, Alderman Paone, and Alderman Savage. I do believe we should add it to the agenda tonight. And I remember getting emails opposed and supporting this resolution when I first came aboard. So it's been kicking.
Can we just take the vote to add it, or?
When we get to it, sure. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we have a process, a longstanding process in the city. This was assigned to committee, and the committees are doing their work. There is no evidence, and I don't see the planning director on here, so we can't even ask her. There's no evidence that there is a rush of new people entering day in, day out. But we can't even ask her because of the precipitous nature in which this is being put forth, even though it was not published on the agenda. I think this is very inappropriate, and I think that this is a gross violation of the processes that this council has adhered to for generations. Alderman Paone, it is on the agenda for tonight to be referred to the Planning Commission. The reason for asking for that is the resolution as it is currently stated is pegged to the comp plan. And so we need to hear from the Planning Commission about what they plan to do in terms of the short-term rentals vis-a-vis the comp plan.
Alderman Tierney.
I understand on the floor is a second on revising the agenda. Can we just take this to a vote?
Okay. I think we've heard from everybody. So we're going to get it on the agenda, and then we can vote on it when we get to it. Regina? Sorry? I think we should get.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, can you just clarify? There are 3 different changes, right?
There are 2, R-1-21.
Oh, 2, okay.
R-61-20. I'm sure we're all going to, should we, I think maybe we'll do a roll call. Can we separate them out, Regina? No, we can't.
No, sir. There's already a motion to include them both unless the motion fails and someone can offer another motion.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Thank you. Okay. We'll do a roll call, please, Regina.
Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles. She's upstairs. Okay. Alderwoman Finlayson. I can't hear you.
What happened to Alderman Paone?
Okay. Alderman Schnittlmeyer.
Aye.
Alderman Gay,
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Passes definitely. And Alderman Arnett.
No.
How about Alderman Payon? Can I vote?
Yes, Alderman Payon, please.
Thank you. Aye.
Thank you. And that motion passes.
And Regina, can I just get clarification? So we're bringing these onto the floor, so we will have a chance to vote it up or down on both things when we get to it, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please, with a show of hands, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Any roll call, Regina? Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, that moved so fast for me and I didn't even hear. Are we approving the consent calendar? Okay, all right, yeah, yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Alderman Gay. Next up is Art 61-20.
Yeah, did we, just a question, point of order. Are we operating under the new, schedule structure where we have removed everything? So we didn't have to vote on that. That was just, I don't recall voting on that. Like where we, what was being floated around, where we removed the consent calendar complete. Is that what we just did?
The consent calendar is
No,
on both
Art 61-20 is coming up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm so confused. I guess it's the structure on here. I'm sorry.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is legislative action. On second reader, we have R6120, short-term rental licenses moratorium, for the purpose of placing on a moratorium on the issuance of new non-owner occupied short-term rental licenses in certain conservation residence districts and other items.
So Alderman Arnett has requested R-61-20 be referred to the Planning Commission, and it's referred to Housing and Human Welfare Committee meeting for review on 1/19/21 at 6:30. If anybody would like to tune in, is there a motion to adopt R-61-20 on second reader?
So move.
Second.
Can I get the proposed amendment from Tierney, Alderman Tierney? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There seemed to be a misinterpretation or some sort of, I'm not sure how to classify it, at rules in city government about tying this into the comp plan. And I don't want this to be misinterpreted as being any sort of open-ended moratorium. So as I said, the process would be to, during this pause of issuances, the comp plan is ongoing, but it looks like my colleagues don't think it's going to get approved this year. So I'd like to just make it 12 months. And so that will give me time, the law office and Dr. Nash, to figure out how we can coexist with these non-owner occupied short-term rentals. We want to make it clear that it is not my objective to ban these these non-owner occupied short-term rentals. And the 12 months will give me ample time to review with, again, Dr. Nash and the law office to write regulations specific to C1 and C1A, the conservation districts. So therefore, that is the basis of the amendment, 12-month from approval of the moratorium.
And Alderman Tierney, is it your intention to make every one of them a special exception?
That's not what is in front of us tonight. What's in front of us tonight is the moratorium to just put a pause. That's what moratorium means. I looked it up in Webster's dictionary. A pause on the issuance of these licenses while concurrent with that 12-month period, I'll draft legislation. And my thought in discussing with the law office is that these would be, they would only require a special exception in the conservation districts. That would be the compromise. But again, that's not what's before us tonight. But I do want you to know that the objective here is to find a way for us to coexist with these non-owner occupied short-term rentals. And it is not our intent, my intent, to ban them. With all of the work, the enormous work that my colleagues put into the legislation last year, it couldn't possibly address these particular zones. And it was always understood that these particular zones would be addressed down the road. And but to do that, again, it's like putting a tourniquet on it. We need to have this moratorium. But again, the amendment to appease Alderman Arnett to a date certain is 12 months.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Alderman Arnett, I was going to go to you next, or Alderman Paone, whoever wants to speak.
I think a point of order takes precedent. The agenda item was to refer this to the Planning Commission. That is what has been posted on the city's website, has been for weeks. So I'm not sure how we can amend a motion to refer this to the Planning Commission with an amendment to the legislation itself.
We'll get Regina to clarify that.
Actually, there's only a note on the agenda to refer it to the Planning Commission. Nobody actually made a motion to refer it there. The only motion on the floor right now is to adopt it on second reader with a second.
I thought I seconded Alderman Paone or Alderman Arnett's motion. Was that not a motion?
That was a motion.
It was Ellie's motion to add it on second reader.
The agenda as posted on the city website as late as earlier today was referral of R6120 to the Planning Commission. I don't think anything that we've done tonight changes that. And it would seem like the first legislative action would be to take up the referral of R6120 to the Planning Commission, not to be amending the resolution itself.
So I'm going to let Regina talk. So we've done what we have on the floor now is Ellie's legislation. Yeah. That's what City Attorney Mike Lyles said.
That is out of order.
That is the order I have here, and that's what we just got on the floor with a first and a second.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Paone was next.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't going to talk to that specific issue, but the length of time. And I think whether we wait for the comp plan or 12 months, it's way too long. I mean, 6 months, fine. 3 months is better. I think that would give planning and zoning plenty of time, but you're talking about a full year. And to me, I just don't like it. Don't think it's, I think it's way too long.
Yeah, we have a floor amendment as well to revise that to 6 months, so that is still ample time to get some legislation drafted.
So no, that hasn't been moved, Alderman Tierney, yet?
No.
You're not moving that, so should we just vote on 12 months?
Yeah, you have to vote on the first motion that has seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we're going to do a roll call on this too. Any more discussion? Alderman
Well,
Gay?
Point of order, can I understand what it is we're not voting on? referral to the Planning Commission. We're voting on the resolution itself. So what happened to referral to the Planning Commission that is on the agenda?
Regina, it was not on my agenda, Alderman Arnett, so I apologize.
When was it removed? It was on iLegislate.
Let me just say, to clarify, that on the posted agenda, you made a request to refer R6120 to the Planning Commission. When we adopted the agenda, Ellie made a request to move the legislation to second reader. That was approved at the approval of the agenda. Then there was a motion to adopt R6120 on second reader in a second. And at this point, they were discussing Ellie's amendment. Nobody actually said, I'd like to make the referral of R6120 to the Planning Commission.
Again,
as of yet.
Point of order, we usually follow the order of the agenda, and the first item on the agenda was referral to the Planning Commission. We did not take that off when we amended the agenda, so it still seems to me that it should be the first order on the agenda. And ordinarily, when we amend the agenda and put something on, it goes to the end of the legislative agenda. Why is it now all of a sudden at the front of the legislative agenda?
Alderman Arnett, when Alderwoman Tierney motion to add it on second reader passed, your motion to refer it to the Planning Commission doesn't come until after that. The motion to adopt it on second reader comes before your proposed motion to refer it to the Planning Commission, because it was approved at the approval of the agenda. It is on the agenda.
Usually when we amend the agenda, the amended item goes at the end of the agenda, not at the front of the agenda and superseding everything else on the agenda.
I agree with what you're saying, but we were not aware until today, myself, that this legislation was going to be adopted on second reader until you guys approved the agenda.
Neither was the entire citizenry of the city of Annapolis, because no one knew about that until this happened. And I think this is a gross violation of open public meetings and transparency.
Well,
no one is prepared. There would be several people who would want to be here to speak to this tonight, and no one is prepared to do that.
Well, Alderman Arnett, I just want to state that it takes 5 votes to amend the agenda, and that's what happened. So my apologies. I don't know what else to say.
Finlayson had a hand up next.
Thank you. I think we need to do an instant replay, because I very clearly heard Alderman Arnett say that he wanted to move R61 to send it back to the Planning Commission. I said, I second that. That was before Alderwoman Tierney started talking about her amendments to the legislation. So there is some confusion here. Alderman Arnett is correct. When we add something to the agenda, it generally goes to the end of the agenda. So I think we really need to pause, talking about pausing, and rethink this process that we're using. I would like to hear from Dr. Nash. Dr. Nash's department is charged with dealing with short-term rentals. We dealt with her and her staff for 4 years, I'm guessing, on this legislation. And so I think that she could probably bring us up to date on where we are. And really, and I hate to put her on the spot, but do we need to stop this legislation from going, or the legislation that's been passed, do we really need to stop it from taking effect? Because that's what we're trying to do. We can call it a moratorium, we can call it a pause, but we need to call it what it is. And I heard Alderwoman Tierney say more than once that she's planning legislation to correct what she feels is wrong. Okay, so this is a step. So I would like to hear, if I might, from Dr. Nash, who we had charged with keeping us abreast of how this legislation was being implemented when we passed it initially.
So, Dr. Nash, have we had more applications this year than last year? Have we?
Good afternoon or good evening. The analysis we've done so far is really just taking a snapshot of the dates. I took a snapshot of January a year ago and a snapshot of January this year. We have fewer this year, but you have to take COVID into account. But of the ones we have, I haven't run the zoning analysis for the ones last year, but of the ones we have this year, as I reported in my staff report, about 80% of them more or less are in C1 and CA, and about 68% of those are not owner occupied, as far as I could tell. So that's the analysis we have so far. I'm happy to do more analysis going forward. We are also still working with host compliance to implement the new monitoring system. We have a meeting with them tomorrow that will be on the ground pretty soon operating. So I'll have more information once that's going. So I can do data collection either way. Of course, it's easier to do data collection if there aren't so many moving pieces, but I feel like, this is a policy decision you guys make. I'm happy to do whatever direction you guys go in.
Thank you.
Alderman
I just want to be sure I heard you correctly, Dr. Nash. You said there are fewer in the current snapshot than there were in the snapshot from a year ago, which does not sound to me like there's a new glut of new entrants here. The very premise of this legislation, of this resolution, is that there's this new avalanche, and yet we just heard from the Planning and Zoning Director that that's not the case. Not only that, I asked specifically of the Planning Director for more information, simple things like how many residences are there in the C1, C1A, so we can know what the percentage of these businesses are there. But I asked for a profile of the entire city. The Ward 1 and C1, C1A are not the only areas of the city that have short-term rental. And I think we all need to have more information before we take precipitous action on moratoria to know what is going on. This law has only been in effect for a year. The contractor has only been in effect for a few months. We do not have information, and by all indications, we don't have information that there's something precipitous happening that needs some immediate emergency action like a moratorium. So I strongly suggest that we are acting way too precipitously. I do think there are also legal questions about differentiating between resident-owned or occupied short-term rentals versus non-resident occupied. And I don't understand how we can do a moratorium on one and not another. And in fact, if we need a moratorium, why aren't we doing it on all short-term rentals in the city? We need to know the information for everybody, not just these two districts in downtown.
Alderman Tierney had a hand up next.
Well, I just want to answer the questions. The moratorium has been vetted by a law office. So that's the answer to one question. The second is that we did introduce a moratorium last year that was rejected. If I can reiterate what I just said, it rules as far as zeroing in on these two districts per code. They are conservation at-risk residential neighborhoods, districts, and they are adjacent to Main Street, Murray Hill. They have a historic overlay. There's approximately 750 residents in the districts, a census report. it says that they are there. It has, I don't know exactly what 2020 is going to say, but it has been losing population. And I think when you ask why the urgency, I would hope that you read all of the testimony that we received. And then I had heard a year ago all of the testimony. Regina has it if we need it, that were residents that spoke, that lived in these conservation districts. So again, it was always understood that we would need to have to look at these two zones. And that's what I'm hoping we can do concurrent with this pause. And then in the staff report, it does say in the past 12 months, planning and zoning has received approximately 100 applications, including both new and renewing. Of these 80 out of 100 were located in C1 and C1A zoning districts. And the majority of those were non-owner occupied. I also wanted to say one of the questions that came up or misunderstandings that happened at rules is a non-owner occupied short-term rental is not their primary residence. An owner occupied short-term rental is the owner's primary residence, and they rent out 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, what have you. And those are very prevalent in the as well, and as they should be, because especially during this time, people need the extra money. So I think I answered all the questions that came up during rules.
Okay, Alderman Savage, then Alderman Gay with their hands up. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I still support this, whether or not it's 12 months or 6 months. I mean, I'd support even longer, but I think if people don't like the 12 months, we can, if this doesn't pass, we can go right to the 6 months. But again, I think as the Alderwoman spoke to, I think it's important to have a pause here. And I want to go back to the data that we've been given in the staff report from Dr. Nash. It says in the past 12 months, Planning and Zoning has received approximately 100 short-term rental license applications. And presumably that's through the entire city, 100 new applications. And so of those, 80 were located in the C1 and C1A zoning districts. So 80% of the new licenses are in those two districts. I mean, if you're shaking your head, Alderman Arnett, I'd like to hear your data, but this is what I'm going off of in our own staff report. This tells me that we have a problem in those two districts in terms of having seen the vast majority of these new short-term rentals. And those are the same areas that we heard testimony on last year regarding the residents who've seen, they did their own inventory, looking at some of these streets that have every, sometimes some of the streets you have every 4 out of 10 homes that are short-term rentals. So this clearly shows that there's an issue with density. And we're hearing from this ward's alderperson that this is a concern of hers and a concern of her constituents. I really don't see why anybody would be opposing this. Doesn't impact anyone. It doesn't impact my ward. It doesn't impact anybody else's except for Alderwoman Tierney's, Ward 1. I want to give her, the alderman, a courtesy. If she feels like this is a concern of her constituents, let's give her this 6 months. Let's give her this 12 months. She said she wants some more time to develop these legislation. I'd hope I would get the same, and I'd give anybody the same courtesy if they want to do something to their own ward, and especially if it doesn't impact my own. So, I mean, that's really one of my primary motivations here. I think Alderwoman Tierney has already gone through addressed some of the legal concerns. But I do want to also state, though, if you recall, I tried to introduce a moratorium, or tried to get one passed that was, I think, I forget how long the moratorium was, but anyway, it was for the entire city back when we were talking about the larger legislation. And back at the time we were told, no, that's too broad of a moratorium. You shouldn't be applying that to the entire city. Well, look, we're coming back. Alderwoman Tierney is coming back with something that only impacts two zones out of the entire city. So I think we're trying to listen to some of the concerns, and I think it's about time we just go ahead and respect our alderwoman here and do this to help her ward out.
Dr. Nash, you had your hand up.
Sorry, and I don't know if Alderman Arnett is about to say the same thing. I just wanted to clarify that it's new and renewing applications in that captured in that number.
And how many did you have the year before, Dr. Nash?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can look that up real quick for you if you like.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you. So just to be clear, when we take this vote, including, so we're only voting on her amendment right now, which is for 6 or 12 months. We haven't even gotten to, and so after we vote on the amendment, then I guess you'll propose that we take a vote on if we want to pass this or not. In that case, I'll save my, thoughts for once we actually get to whether we'll pass this or not. It's not worth debating the time right now. I'm against the extension of 12 months. I thought 6 would be fine, but even that's a lot. But yeah.
Alderman Channelmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this the point where I could offer a floor amendment to the legislation?
Sorry, we have this first and second, so we have to vote on this, vote it up or down. Is that right, City Attorney?
Yes, sir.
And then an amendment after that?
We can reintroduce it with 6 months. So we've got it on the floor now at 12 months. Can we just get this voted on to see where everybody stands? Yes. So R-61-20 is on the floor with a first and a second for a 12-month moratorium. We're going to do Regina, sorry.
I'm sorry, we don't actually have Alderman Tierney. You need to move your motion and get a second.
I thought
you mean to move your amendment. I'm sorry.
Oh no, she was going to hold on the amendment. That's what I understood. Okay. Is that not right?
Okay. So
Alderman
all we
Tierney?
need is a roll call.
Yep.
Point of information, what is it then we're voting on?
Yeah.
The resolution as submitted?
Yes.
If you support a 12-month moratorium.
Yes. No, it sounds like we're voting on the resolution as submitted, not with this amendment.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, you told me to introduce the amendment on the floor, so we were discussing the amendment.
Regina, can you clarify it for us, or Mr. City Attorney?
Okay, right now we have for R-6120, you have the motion to adopt on second reader was, it has a motion with a second, and you were at the point of discussing Alderwoman Tierney's amendment, but nobody moved the amendment and it has not been seconded as of
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion to move the amendment number 1.
Okay, so she needs a second.
And that amendment is
that's the amendment that I thought would appease Alderman Arnett was to make it a date certain of 12 months instead of tying it into the comp plan.
How many motions can we have on the floor at one time?
Well, you're amending. She's putting forth an amendment to the main motion, which can be done right now. And then if you pass the amendment, you can go into the main motion and attach the amendment to the main motion.
So can we get you moving that, Alderman Tierney?
Well, then, Mr. Lyles, can I amend the amendment from 12 to 6 months at this time?
Yes, she didn't get
you know what? I don't think you got a second, right? Yeah, you didn't get a second.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yeah, can we fast forward?
Okay, let's slow up.
Yeah.
If we might, Mr. Mayor. If we might.
Good.
Alderman Tierney, do you have a motion to amend the main motion on the floor? And what is it? Because you need that in a second to deal with it in the amendment. Because we didn't get a second, right, Regina?
She did.
All right. Well, then can I make a motion then to amend the resolution on the floor to make it a 6-month moratorium?
Now you need a second.
We need a second.
I will second the motion that Alderwoman Tierney has put forward.
So there is a motion to amend R-61-20 to 6-month moratorium. There is a second on that.
Now you can take a vote, Mr. Mayor.
You should do a roll call, I think, Regina, don't you?
Okay. Mayor Buckley?
No.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Pendell Charles is out of the room. Alderwoman Finlayson?
No.
Okay. Alderman Shannon Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
No.
Okay. That motion passes. For
And now it's time for the main motion.
Is there a motion to adopt R-61-20 as amended on second reader?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Okay, and Madam City Clerk, I think we should do the same roll call.
Is there discussion? I thought Alderman Gay wanted to have discussion.
Oh, sorry, Alderman Gay. Sorry, I didn't see.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to save my discussion for this because I thought that to debate it during the amendment for time was pointless. It wasn't the time and place. So I had originally told Alderwoman Tierney that I would support this with the 6-month moratorium. But I still have questions, even as the testimony poured in today. I had just a number of questions. With the 6-month moratorium, how would that affect, revenue of any fees that we would receive from the Airbnbs? Can that be explained? Just a projection of, how much we may lose?
Is that directed to me?
I guess so. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I'm not sure who really.
I just don't think anybody's, for instance, if somebody's going to apply for a license and we're going to say, no, we're not doing those right now, we are going to lose any rental, any hotel, motel taxes that we would have collected from that house that if they had gotten a license. So we will lose something. I just cannot tell you by any means which ones we'll lose because we don't know how many we're going to hold off with this moratorium.
When someone submits an application for an Airbnb, or say, I buy this house, I submit an application or use it as an Airbnb, do we charge a fee for that?
There is a fee for the application for a license.
How much is that fee? Do you know?
And that Director Nash would have to answer that for you.
$200.
It's $200?
That is $200, yes.
Yes, and so then as they get set up and start renting the space, we would be collecting the hotel motel tax. So for whatever time we delay somebody having this type of rental, we will lose income. But there's no way I can estimate it for you.
So based off of what Director Nash has said earlier, what I heard from the conversation, is that if there are 80 applications right now that are currently being processed out of 100,
for Ward 1?
I guess I heard 80 out of 100.
For C1 and C1A.
So that's about $16,000 just off of the applications fees alone.
No, 80 times, okay.
If it's $200, right? I just did 80 times 2.
80. It's 16, that's right.
Yeah. So that's a lot of money. So then so if they actually rent it out, we get a percentage based off of the day. So per day, we get a percentage of the money collected, and that is then given to us from the county. That doesn't come directly to us, does it?
No, it comes directly to us. It is a 7% tax.
So 7%, okay. So that's a lot of money.
Now, keep in mind, we have to turn over some of that. 20% of what we collect goes to both the Convention and the Visitors Bureau and the Arts Council. So we have to turn around and give some of that away.
Okay.
But I can't, again, I wouldn't be able to estimate it for you because I don't know what the rental charges would be for the night. And then I'd have to calculate a 7% tax on that. So it's not something I can give you an estimate for.
Okay. I appreciate that, though. And then secondly, just for Alderwoman Tierney, you know, this is, it was, you know, positioned that in saying that if we extended the moratorium and we're able to get a better grappling on the Airbnbs and short-term rentals or whatsoever, that we'd be able to help affordable housing or housing affordability in this area in particular. Could you explain that a little more, or how this could help with in that situation?
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Gay. First, to backpedal on there is a fiscal analysis that was done by Katie Connolly that it was if the trajectory math worked, it would be losing about $5,000 annually. So I guess with 6 months would be less. Anyways, yeah, on these houses, you have to understand that anytime there's a fixed number of these houses, they can't be demolished, they can't be added to. It's a historic district, and anytime they're bought for a second home or for this use, it is a lost opportunity in having the home for family or as a long-term rentals. When I don't live in the historic district anymore, but when I lived there, I know I had 2 long-term renters on either side of me. They were professors at St. John's College. I remember, and I'll let me just tell this story, that when the Capital Gazette was on Maryland Avenue, I asked Mr. Hutzel why he was leaving Maryland Avenue and the building, and there was a sprinkler issue. But the second and the most important thing that stuck with me was that he said there are no places for my journalists to live within walking distance. And why is that? That is because there were no homes that could be used for long-term rentals. They were all being used for this use. So to answer Alderman Gay's question, it's a lost opportunity when a house is bought to be used as a weekend hotel. You don't have the opportunity for a long-term rental, or we are at a juncture now where some of these houses are selling, and perhaps the market will come down. I don't know, and we could have families. Maybe the housing market will come down. I don't know if the short-term rentals are keeping the pricing artificial.
And so additionally, just because I got a couple other questions and I just kind of want to speed through. So this moratorium, the 6-month moratorium, only applies to applications within the historic district. The current Airbnbs would still be able to function and operate as they would normally. This would just stop applications from being processed in the historic district.
That's correct. If you have an existing license, that's fine. Your what's the word? My mind is blank. It doesn't cover. Yeah, your grandfather. Yeah, your grandfather.
Continue that use.
Yeah.
Well, this is a very tough decision because, I think that I honestly understand where you're coming from and the responsibility that you have to your constituents. And I was a huge advocate for the Savannah model of Savannah, Georgia model of Airbnb rentals, where it was, capped based on certain districts and areas. There were, lines drawn that would allow for, certain areas to flourish while others were respecting the culture of their, as they say, the culture of their communities. And so while I get that, and I think that's important, I'm also hesitant because of the current state of our economy, because we're going just through so much. And I look at that as just even a slither of revenue for us, which I think is important. And so I think this is just an odd time,
I'd like to address
Alderman Tierney, and then I think Alderman Paone had his hand up first.
Yeah, I'd like to address that, especially as we're going through the pandemic and the intangibles, if you will. During the shutdown, I have to ask, what were these empty homes doing for our economy? We City Dock Coffee, our local coffee hangout, closed. We need locals, and we need local residents, and these aren't just my residents. They're our residents. They vote, they contribute, they volunteer. They bought a home in the conservation district knowing that they were going to share a demising wall with a neighbor. They didn't buy into the conservation district knowing that they were going to be next to an operating hotel, if you will, Airbnb. So I also think that the intangibles is the social capital and the social fabric and our resiliency. The only way we've become resilient as a community is with our local residents. So that's why I want to bring it to a vote. I want the public to know whether or not we care about our residents or we care more about an internet platform. I just don't get it. And especially the faith in our code. I'm not advocating for me, I'm advocating for faith in the code. The code defines these two zones, these two tiny zones as at-risk residential neighborhoods. So what does at-risk mean to all of you? It means to keep our residents, to keep them residents. Hotel guests aren't residents. They help us during weekends. They may go to restaurants and stuff, but they're not here during the week. And I can't fathom why you can't understand that these are all of our residents. And you saw the testimony, you heard it all last year. And again, that's not what is, wait till I have legislation. This is just a moratorium before you. To put a pause for 6 months, which will barely give me enough time to introduce legislation. And based on this response, I can't imagine how long approving the legislation is going to take. So I've got a window of time of 6 months to get that done. So in the meantime, we can stop the bleeding, if you will.
Alderman Payne was next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Dr. Nash. Does planning and zoning need a pause to assess what we have here? I mean, we're talking about 6 months, originally a year. 6 months, 3 months, if you do need a pause. Talk to me.
They're not asking for the pause.
Well, this would be a 6 month delay is what they're asking for at this point.
The objective, sorry to interrupt, but the objective of the pause is so that we don't continue approving these. It's to stop approving them until we have a regulation on how we are going to coexist with them. I want to make it clear my intent is not to ban them. So 6 months just to stop them as we evaluate what is the best legislation.
We being planning and zoning, presumably would be a large part of that.
Well, it will be myself working with planning and zoning in the law office to develop a process so that these applications can be approved with the residents' concerns addressed.
Well, I thought the resolution said for inventory and to assess what we had here.
Well, that too as well. And also, I mean, ideally I wanted input into the comp plan, but we can't wait for that.
Let me go back to Dr. Nash. Can you answer my original question? Do we need that long to do an inventory and look and see what we have here?
Well, as I said before, we're working on an inventory now with host compliance, but I mentioned it is easier to count things if they're holding still. But I would also say that I forgot my other point.
I know the feeling.
Oh, I know. But I would say if the intent is to do legislation, then obviously we will need every minute of at 6 months. So it depends on what the goal is.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Chandler, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Alderman Gay, I do want to just address a question that you brought forward regarding Airbnbs and short-term rentals and their impact on housing costs. There was a study done in 2017 by the National Bureau of Economic Research that does show there is a correlation between frequency of short-term rental units and housing costs, specifically for long-term renters. It is not as dramatic as the comptroller of the city of New York made it out to be in his economic study done about a year or two ago, but there is still a correlation. And I do think that us taking a pause to look at that and help us come up with a good way to ensure that we have the interests of our residents, including those who rent these out and live in our town in mind, we can come up with some good resolution. Good legislation.
Alderman Gay was next.
Yeah, I just had two additional questions. The first for, oh my gosh, it must something in the air because I've just blanked. The first for Director Nash, because you mentioned something when you were speaking. You said the moratorium is standing still. You can count. Oh, but it depended on the legislation. So I'm sorry, my question was for Alderwoman Tierney. Well, let me ask this question first, because as you know, the task force, in mentioning housing affordability, is counting on the Airbnbs and short-term rentals. And if we can cooperate with the law office, obviously, to collect fees to, fund the affordable housing projects that we hope to carry out in the future. So how would that impact, our, again, opportunity for revenue for, projects within the city?
Yes, you and I talked about that. It's an awesome idea to assign, I guess the word is to assign some of the tax and put it in our housing fund. I just want to make it clear that this moratorium does not affect the quantity of Airbnb, of short-term rentals we have citywide. And I think what you're speaking to is sort of a citywide approach to getting the most of that money. I don't know if we want to conflate that with these particular properties and what we would gain or lose as far as that housing fund or whatever we were going to call it. But that is a great idea, and I think what's really exciting is that we do have a company, Home Compliance, now that will tap a lot of these untapped short-term rentals citywide, so we can optimize that revenue.
And then lastly, what would just because I know everyone's wanting to get to the vote, then lastly, what would the ultimate goal then be of, because if we vote on this and give the moratorium, you'd be working to create legislation. What would that legislation do? What is your goal? Yeah,
that's an excellent question. First, I just want to say, and I know you're sick of hearing me talk, but this is not any derogatory comment or anything about the legislation that was passed a year ago. That, as I said, that was an enormous effort and couldn't possibly address all of the particular zones. But the legislation that I would introduce on this, heads up, preview, is very simple. On every zone, there is a use table in Title 21. And in these particular zones, and that's why this is going to be independent legislation. You all might have independent legislation for your particular zones in your ward, but for these conservation districts, I would call these, or I'd ask the law office and planning and zoning to call these non-owner occupied dwellings a non-conforming use, similar to, I hate to use the word, but a bed and breakfast. For example, a bed and breakfast is a non-conforming use in C1 and C1A. And to have a bed and breakfast in C1 and C1A, you apply, but you have to go through the special exception process. And that is a great compromise because then the residents can attend a public hearing and know that this Airbnb is applying, and then have input in it and say no or yes. So I think that answers your question. That would be my legislation. So it's a great compromise because it accepts the fact that we can coexist, and I think the residents would appreciate having a say in some of these coming in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Alderman Savage and Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just to clarify, Alderman Gay, I do think your concerns about the affordable housing and funding, I think, are really good. And I do think, we tried to get that passed in the last short-term rental legislation we dealt with last year. We couldn't get it passed then, but I think we should definitely work on tacking that onto Alderwoman Tierney's legislation if it can't get put in there to begin with. But I'm definitely supportive of using some of the fees to go towards that issue. But I do want to just restate the fiscal impact. As Alderwoman Tierney said, the staff report says $5,000 annually will be lost. But remember, 6-month moratorium would be half of that, so $2,500, and probably even less given COVID has already suppressed everything. So I don't think we'd be losing out on a significant amount of money in the short term. And again, it is just short term. 6 months is, I think, very reasonable amount of time, courtesy to give our colleagues to develop legislation.
Anybody else? So before we go to vote, Sally, can you tell us what the Alderman Arnett, sorry.
Thank you. So I would just make a couple of comments. I think Alderman Gay is on the right line of thinking, but it's my understanding, and we heard testimony to this point, that short-term rentals are one of the few safe ways that people can come to the city rather than using hotels, unless they have friends to stay with. And in the pandemic, that is something that's at a premium. So I think we need, and if we had the time to complete the committee work, these were some of the things that we would have talked about, and hopefully have gotten some data on it, but seems that some are ready to rush to a vote. But I would ask, the moratorium, nothing has changed. If anything, the number of registrations, according to Dr. Nash, are going down. So there's no new news here. What have we been doing for the last year in terms of drafting specific legislation? Why is it only now we need a moratorium to draft legislation? There is no news here. It was always known that the highest concentration of short-term rentals was in downtown, and second to that in my ward, which will feel presumably additional pressure for these to be located there when they can't go to Ward 1. But it is not news where these short-term rentals have been located. And so I find this to be very hard to find the logic of this. It's not palatable. I would also point out, when I rent short-term rentals going on vacation, I rent for a week. I don't rent for a weekend. But once again, we don't have the data. We don't know how many people who are using short-term rentals are only for weekends and how many are there for all week long. So this argument that the house is dark for the rest of the week, when people are away, houses are dark while they're gone. If they're spending their winter in Florida, their house is dark all winter long. Are we going to be legislating how people's lights are on or off? I find this to be a very flimsy effort and a very flimsy need for a moratorium. But you've known that's my feeling for a while now.
Actually, let me correct myself. It was actually, we had 9 more applications this year than last year. So about level, looking at January 2020 to January 21. So
may I ask how many of those were those all in the C1A? Or C1,
I have not
C1A?
run the zoning analysis on the earlier numbers.
Again, so we don't have the information, but 9 out of how many residences in C1, C1A, total residences without regard to their rental status?
That, I can look that up unless Alderwoman Tierney, do you have that on the top of your head?
No, I was just responding to something. What was the question?
Total
9
number.
new, it hardly seems like a rush, a glut of new pressure that would call for a moratorium. I can't imagine there's got to be a few hundred at least residences in the C1, C1A. 9 new. And those are probably new because they're complying with the law and registering. They may well have been short-term rentals all along. Again, analysis that we're not being given the chance to look at in committee.
770 properties
So
in
9
C1 and C1A.
Boy, that sounds pretty urgent to me.
Alderman Paone had his hand up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. After hearing a lot of conflicting and somewhat confusing testimony, I'd like to add to the confusion and move that we make this 3 months, not 6. I just don't see the reason for delaying it that long. I think that I don't mind delaying it a little bit, but I think we've had a lot of time to come up with some legislation. I'm not unsympathetic to the people downtown, but I think 3 months would do it. I don't see why we've got to take a pro-business approach in these times. And I think that, I could handle 3 months, but I think that's a much better time than 6. Thank you.
Second.
Thanks. I think we've got 6 months on the floor, though.
You've got the original second reader motion on the floor.
Yeah.
All right, but I want to amend that. Why?
Because there's the motion passed with 6 months, and in order to, this would be a reconsideration of that amendment.
Not been passed. We've yet to vote on that.
You got
we passed it on the amendment.
We did not. The 6 month amendment has not been put to a vote.
Regina, could you recall what we did?
Yes, the motion for 6 months did pass.
We did a roll call.
The motion to amend, but not we haven't voted on making it amend to 6 months. No, doesn't someone have to make a motion to amend? We have debate, and then we vote on the amendment?
We're finished that. We've passed that point, Alderman Arnett.
So we have a motion to amend on the floor now. So we have made that motion. We have a first and a second on it. That's 6 months. So I think we can bring it back up again if Alderman Paone wants to go the 3 month route. So we will come back there again. Who has a hand up? Alderman Savage. We have talked this through quite a considerable amount tonight.
Yeah, just quick on the whole pro-business approach or argument. I mean, I do think we should be treating these Airbnbs like businesses. Because don't forget, we have these traditional bed and breakfasts that are being really disadvantaged here. They're already limited per block, where these Airbnbs are not limited, except for you can only have one. You can only own one short-term rental. That was what we did last year. So I do think this will help the Alderwoman and the rest of us develop legislation, give us time to develop legislation to help out these traditional businesses. But also, I think, Alderman Paone, I'd also ask that maybe we just broaden out the pro-business argument in the sense that I think what will help our existing businesses downtown and in our neighborhoods is having more people actually living in these homes, having less vacant homes that are sitting there as vacant unowner occupied short-term rentals. Because I think, as Alderwoman Tierney was saying, it's if you have more locals, they're going to be walking down to the coffee shops, walking down to the restaurants for takeout, that kind of thing on a daily basis. And whereas the Airbnbs are not necessarily doing that. I mean, yes, some of them are renting out for a week, which is good, but I really doubt that they're all doing that, especially now during the economic downturn. So I do think Alderwoman Tierney's proposal is a really good compromise. It's 6 months, and it's also only impacting a certain aspect of the of those short-term rentals that we have.
Alderwoman Tierney.
I have just a clarification one asked on why a legislation wasn't initiated earlier. I think you know that I was recused for quite a while, and it wasn't until I got a letter from the law office that I didn't have a conflict of interest in selling my property in the historic district. So that's why I haven't worked on legislation. And the other thing is that I just want to reiterate why the 6 months now. The moratorium, it's an appropriate step, and it will give me time to put meaningful regulation in place to protect, these zones. And if you think more data is needed, then a moratorium is even more necessary to get that data. And at the same time as we draft legislation. So I kindly ask my colleagues to give me 6 months. You know how long legislation takes, and the dialogue, et cetera. And that will give ample time for public input too.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to do a roll call on this for the amended R-61-20 to 6 month moratorium. My position hasn't changed. Sorry, Regina?
We already did that.
What?
The amendment for 6 months was moved by Alderman Schneidermeyer with a second.
We're just adopting on second reader now.
Yeah,
we're back to the main motion.
Reader. We're finished.
We're back to the main motion.
Of adopting it on second reader.
With 6 months as the duration. Okay,
so sorry. So thank you for clarifying that. It's a lot going on here. My position hasn't changed. We want legislation. We all want to regulate these areas. I believe the moratorium is going to slow us down, because I think we should be working on it, and we'll rest on that. But let's take a roll call on it, please, Regina.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Second reader.
Mayor Buckley.
Can we clarify for Alderman Payne what we are voting on now, please?
You are voting on R-6120 on second reader as amended with 6 months. And it was moved by Alderman Schneidermeyer, and it has a second, and now we're doing the roll call. So Mayor Buckley.
No.
Okay. Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payone.
I just want to clarify before I vote that I'm not allowed to amend this to 3 months. Is that correct? Mr. City Attorney.
There's a motion on the floor with a second, and the vote is proceeding. Can't do anything with this motion right now.
All right. Aye.
Okay. Alderwoman Finlayson.
No.
Alderman Schneidermeyer.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Aye.
Okay. Hold on a second. Where am I? Okay. Sorry, hold on 1 second, please. Alderman Gay?
No.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
And Alderman Arnett?
No. No.
So I have 1, 2,
Fails.
Fails.
Or it does, the motion fails.
Mr. City Attorney, can Alderman Peone bring up the 3 months?
Okay, let's go back here. What are we doing?
Or do you want to, Alderman Peone?
He would have to make a motion to reconsider.
Well, see, here's where you are right now. Practically speaking, you have no moratorium on short-term rental licenses. The bill that was passed months ago is proceeding, and folks have to sign up, apply, and they will get taxed. There's no moratorium. So if you're trying to do something for 3 months, you're trying to put a moratorium back on something that failed as a motion.
Okay.
So if you don't like moratoriums, you're in good stead because there is no moratorium now.
Alderman Gay.
Yeah, could I just add before we move on? I fully support the legislation, and I think it should be zoned based off of district. I just don't think that, based on what the staff has told me today, that the moratorium is necessary. I fully support the legislation, though, and I think it should be zoned for the protection of the historic district.
Okay, I'll try to get that written right away.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett.
And I would say, having had many, many years of working on short-term rentals, I will be more than happy to help you in any way I can with drafting that legislation. And the sooner the better. And as you well know, I'm also thinking about similar legislation for the R2NC. But I think we need to just get to work on drafting that.
Yeah, I think we need baby steps. So I'll start with C1 and C1A.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item.
I understand, Alderwoman Tierney, but I know a lot of the pitfalls in having gone through it, as does Alderwoman Finlayson. So I offer help.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is O2120, the conveyance of city-owned property. For the purpose of approving conveyance of certain property, 113 Cathedral Street, LLC, and expressly authorizing said conveyance to be made a private sale and not a public auction.
Is there a motion to adopt O-21-20 on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And Alderman Savage and Alderman Annette have 1, 2, and 3 amendments. Who would like to take the lead? Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, staff, for your patience on all this. But we've been working with the Environmental Matters Committee and also Rules and Government. We've been working with the property owner on this. This proposal is legislation is to essentially surplus 2 very small parcels that are owned by the city to private entity so they can expand their parking, and they will then access this parking through a city parking lot. So they would get a total of 4 parking places. Because of the loss of green open space, because it's currently grass, Environmental Matters Committee wanted to try to find a bit of a compromise in terms of replacing some of that lost green space. And so we're wrestling for a number of months and trying to work with the owners, and we have come up with some amendments that have been agreed upon. And the amendments simply, well, I'll introduce those separately. I would like to move the amendments 1 through 3, the Savage Arnett amendments.
Second.
Okay.
And so just to explain those, it would simply add language to, if I can find it, simply adds language and developed by the law office and also the committee to require that the property owners work with our work with our deputy city manager for resilience and sustainability, and who will work with the departments to basically work with them to install some kind of green infrastructure. So be it rain garden, permeable pavers, or simply tree planting, but it's something that's going to work for the property owner to replace the lost green space. And again, this is something that both the owners have been agreeable to.
Thank you for your work there, Alderman Savage, Alderman Arnett. So we have a first and a second. I'm sure we all support this. Any other discussion? Or Alderman Tierney?
Yeah, I just want to congratulate my two colleagues on the environmental matters for working hard on this. This was this is in my ward. I know I was approached with this over a year ago, and all the way back to previous attorneys, and this was a great compromise. And it's also to tell any other public or resident when they want to do something like this, it does go through a thorough review, which it has. So again, thank you for implementing this environmental requirement.
Okay, so all those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye. And opposed? You guys have it. Is there a motion to vote on whether this amendment to O-21-20 is substantive? See none. Is there a motion to adopt O-21-20 as amended on second reader?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O-21-20 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Shandemeyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda. It is related.
Yes, it's the companion legislation, Mr. Mayor. It's O-2220, the conveyance of city-owned property.
We get a motion, please.
To the 113.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Amendments are, is there a motion to move that as amended, please?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Did somebody, I'd like to move the amendment. Amendments 1 through 3, Savage and Arnett amendments.
I think someone did, yeah. Right, Regina?
You want to move amendments 1 through 3 for O-22?
Okay, sorry, I thought we had a first and a second. Okay, we got a first and a second there. All those in favor say aye with a show of hands.
Regina was waving her hand.
I just wanted to say something.
It got 10 votes. It must be good. Regina put her hand up.
I didn't want to vote, but I think the city manager had something to say regarding the amendment number 3 on this bill.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a question. I was involved with this early on in the first few Environmental Matters Committee meetings, and then I wasn't later. But the property on O-22 is 59 square feet. Did they agree to put stormwater management on the 59 square feet, or to help contribute money to the other parcel for the green infrastructure on there?
Alderman Savage?
Well, the law office had been speaking with them, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to change the language that was originally proposed, is because it doesn't limit it to stormwater management, because it wouldn't make sense for such a small sliver. But in this case, it still allows them to do other green infrastructure, and it mentions just simply tree plantings. If they could do, because I know some of them were interested in putting in some shrubs around the property. So, and this property owner had at one point expressed the support of that idea to the law office. That's my understanding.
Okay, Mr. City Manager? Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion to amend O-22-20 with 1, 2, and 3. Do we have a second? All those with a show of hands say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to vote on whether this amendment is substantive? Is there a motion to adopt R-22-20 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All those in favour with a show of hands again, say aye.
I have a quick question before we take the. Was this related to that space that we discussed a while ago? It was in a parking lot and they wanted to. Okay, all right, I'm ready. I just gotta, remind myself.
No worries, there's a lot going on. Show of hands.
You're such an old man.
Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against? No one against. Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt O-22-20 on third reader?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, second. Thank you. Regina?
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney. Alderwoman Tierney.
Whoa, sorry. Yeah, aye.
Alderman Payon. I can't hear him, but he looks like he's saying aye. Okay.
You're on mute, Fred.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Shandemeyer. Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Yep.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is O-31-20, non-motorized vehicles, for the purpose of setting standards for the use of non-motorized vehicles on sidewalks and establishing a definition.
Is there a motion to adopt O-31-20 on second reader?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. There are two proposed amendments. Alderman, you would like to move those, Alderman Tierney?
Yes, I move amendment 1 and 2 on this.
Second.
We got a second there. Thank you. Could you elaborate?
So this, I love what my colleague said about this bill. It's basically, instead of the code being half empty, it's half full here. We turn a negative into a positive. Before we would say that that non-motorized vehicles were not allowed, and now we're saying they are allowed, subject to approval, and if not, we would have signs. The amendment was written to address this went to the Transportation Board, and they did a very thorough analysis, and it opened up the whole discussion on bike lanes and stuff like that. So they just want to make sure that before we put up any prohibited signs, that it goes through a thorough review as it reads, in consultation with relevant city boards and commissions and other entities as may be deemed useful by the director, shall undertake assessments and develop standards guiding designation of prohibited areas.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Alderman Gay?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is this, so while I think it obviously makes sense at first read, I have two questions. I mean, so what then happens? I see a kid riding his bike in a negligent way. I call the cops. I mean, so what, who are they reporting to? Is there a fee associated with breaking this law? Like what, or is this just to have it on the books?
Attorney?
There's no fee, and there's no reference of any enforcement in the legislation. It just corrects the existing language.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Are we discussing the amendments now or the ordinance? I think it's the amendments that are on the floor.
we moved the amendments. I'm assuming this is answering that question.
So this is the time to discuss the amendments. I think Alderman Gay's questions, which I share, are not to the amendments, it's to the ordinance itself. I think we're discussing the amendments and voting on the amendments. Then we can go to the ordinance as amended.
You want to save them till then, Alderman Gay?
Oh, yeah, of course. My apologies. I thought we voted on the amendments already. Okay.
After these, we vote on the amendments next. Any other discussion on the amendments? Glad there's no fines there because I'll probably be the first one that gets one.
Me too.
You should.
All those in favor, with a show of hands, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Is there a motion to vote on whether the amendments are substantive? Seeing none. Is there a motion to adopt O-31-20 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Alderman Gay.
Yeah, my question was not to discourage the bill at all. I think, excuse me, I was in the middle of a granola bar. I'm sorry. I think that, you know, the purpose of it as is written is very helpful, you know, not to just be, you know, crazy on the streets. But my question is, how is that enforced? Or is this just something that we're saying like, this is, you know, the city saying that we, but, you know, is this a parking thing or?
Alderman Tierney.
So let me back up. I apologize, Dr. Nash. I'm not explaining this very well. Under current, I'll just read the staff report. Under current city code, a person is not allowed to ride on or use in a negligent manner any non-motorized wheeled vehicle on a public street, alley, or sidewalk. This legislation implies that a person can ride or use a non-motorized wheeled vehicle on a public street, alley, or sidewalk if done in a careful manner. And so we simplified it to make it clear and explicitly identify the kinds of non-motorized wheeled vehicles that are included as well. So and it exempts any existing sidewalk or street that has a sign, like at the Navy Stadium. Uh-oh, I'm being called to the principal. What?
Mr. City Attorney has something to add.
Yes, just wanted to make sure it was corrected in the record that when you pass something like this, there is enforcement associated with it. Council is not in the business of passing legislation that is not enforceable. Okay? And it's a misdemeanor for violations.
Yeah.
Alderman Payon was next, and then...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This legislation actually changes absolutely nothing. Right now, what it says is that you can't ride on a sidewalk in a negligent manner. And the other one, the new one says you can ride on a sidewalk as long as you don't ride it in a negligent manner. I mean, that's where I think my colleague came up with the half empty glass, half full. It doesn't change anything. I don't think it's necessary, but hey, you know, all of our legislation ought to be this simple to read and interpret. And, you know, you want to vote for it, fine, doesn't change anything. You don't want to vote for it, well, you're really not, you know, stopping progress. So.
All right, Sally, you're up.
Alderman Annette, and then I'll let Sally finish it off.
I was just going to say what Mike Lyles said. So.
Alderman Annette.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. My constituents have raised considerable concern about this because if you look at page 2 and part B on line 1, the things that are itemized that can be now on sidewalks, it appears, are things like bicycles, unicycles, skateboards, inline skates, all things that move very fast and have quite a record of having collisions with pedestrians on the sidewalk. I do believe pedestrians are the primary purpose for sidewalks. and allowing these other kinds of vehicles on sidewalks, as this seems to do, and I'm more than willing to be corrected if I'm misinterpreting this, I think is not a safe thing to do. Further, I agree with Alderman Gay. I don't think this is enforceable, even though we're supposed to pass legislation that is enforceable. There's no way the police are going to be viewing and keeping people from riding safely or unsafely on sidewalks. It's just really not enforceable. So I guess I'm feeling very uncomfortable, in fact, not inclined to vote for this, as long as it's allowing bicycles and inline skates and skateboards to be mixing with pedestrians and mothers with baby carriages on sidewalks. But again, if I'm not reading this correctly, I'd be more than happy to be set straight.
Dr. Nash, where do baby carriages come in?
I think she said, bite your tongue, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry. Well, Alderman Paone is correct in that it doesn't really change anything. It does define non-motorized vehicles, which are not currently defined. So I see your point, but I think it would take new legislation to make it so these things could not go on the sidewalks. Since they are technically allowed to now, it's just pretty, the language isn't clear, which is what this ordinance is intending to do. If there's a place where there are a lot of baby carriages, etc., we could always make that one of the places where you cannot ride your bike on the sidewalk.
A lot of hands up. Sorry, Alderman Paone is the one I saw first. I apologize.
Thank you. Non-motorized vehicles are defined in the Motor Vehicle Code, Mr. Mayor, and we're bound to follow that definition. It's not complicated. It's simple, and I don't think it's a matter really of controversy before us.
Thank you, Alderman Chenoweth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so for my clarification, under the previous or under the current code, I am allowed to ride my bike on the sidewalk just as long as I don't act like a crazy person, correct?
Exactly.
And under the proposed ordinance, it explicitly says you are okay to ride your bike on the sidewalk as long as you don't do it like a crazy person. Previously, it just didn't define what I could do.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, I am starting to see that, Alderman Paone. I believe you. I believe you very eloquently put it correctly.
You mean I didn't need to do that bike lane?
Bike lanes, more bike lanes.
It's just making a negative a positive.
Yeah.
Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I do support this because reading through it, granted, I think a lot of the language is the same, but it does make some improvements that are I think worth putting in there. In particular, it does at least open the door to using bikes and such on the sidewalks. And yes, generally it's a bad idea, but sometimes it's needed. Some of our roads, unfortunately, that don't have bike lanes, it's often safer to be on sidewalk. And I've biked all the way to my work on Riva, and sometimes, yes, I did jump on the sidewalk on Forest Drive and on Old Forest Drive, and then on Riva, and I didn't hit one pedestrian. There was no pedestrian. I didn't mean it that way in terms of physically hitting them, but there was not one pedestrian even walking on the sidewalk at that time. And it was definitely a lot safer for me to be on that sidewalk. Would I do it downtown? No. Because it's a lot more people and you have a lot more telephone poles and things to ride around. But I think in some cases it's better to at least allow it to happen responsibly. This legislation also includes a provision for posting signs, which I don't think is in the original code. So I do think that's another improvement. So I will be supporting this because of that.
Thank you. Anyone else? This is the steps for us on microtransit, so I will be supporting this.
We have a first and a second. All those in favour with a show of hands say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay. Ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O-31-20 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
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 Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Yes.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Shandemeyer.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
No.
Okay, that motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is O-43-20, Aldermanic Annual Allowance for the purpose of specifying types of appropriate expenditures for the use of the Aldermanic Annual Allowance.
Is there a motion to adopt O-43-20 on second reader?
Motion that we adopt O-43-20 on second reader.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Oh. Alderman Savage.
Yeah, just to remind folks, this and the public as well, this does not increase or alter our pay whatsoever. This just adjusts how we can use the training budget that's provided to us in terms of using some of that money for constituent services, such as getting materials for town hall meetings or other such related expenses. So this is not, we can't use any of this money on campaigning. This is just for that constituent service that we do for reaching out in our official capacity. So that's the, I mean, you know, I've had a number of town halls and I've had a couple of printing expenses, and that's what I would, especially now we don't have much training opportunity given COVID. This allows us to use that to get some flyers printed up just for these purposes.
Okay. All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O-43-20 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Shandemeyer.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
That carried.
Ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is O-44-20, Employee Organizations, for the purpose of removing the deadline for employee organizations to petition the city for recognition as an exclusive bargaining agent for eligible governmental personnel.
Is there a motion to adopt O-44-20 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a Shandemeyer amendment. Would you like to move that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so moved. And just for the information of my colleagues, the amendment essentially just irons out the timing of budget and contract negotiations to be a little more compliant with HR.
Just got to grab a second on that. Second on that?
Second.
Thank you. Any other elaboration, Alderman Shandemeyer? No? Good. Thank you. Is there a motion to vote? Oh, okay, so all those in favour, sorry, with a show of hands, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion to vote on whether the amendment O-44-20 are substantive? Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt O-44-20 as amended?
Mayor, I believe Alderman Gay was.
Regina, please take my no from the books. I did not mean that. Sorry. That was a yes for the amendment.
So get a motion on O-44-20 as amended.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Q. Is there a motion to adopt O-44-20 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll. Oh, sorry, before that, Alderman Gay.
Yeah, I do have a question. So, because I'm reading as we go through some of this, and I had mentioned this previously, I still have a concern about the financing that may go involved. The note is just, the fiscal note is vague. I mean, it just says that there may be an increase in overtime as opposed to comp time. I think that's what it says. So, I mean, again, just before I take this vote, what does that look like heading into this, year with the budget all over the place?
So we don't really know. This will not lead to a big surge in employee organizations, unions. It simply just makes it more convenient for people to express their right to organize. They are still allowed to stay unorganized if they do not want to, if they want to, but if they decide to form a union, it just makes it a little easier.
And so there would never be a fee that would get so outrageous that it would be in the millions or anything like that, correct, Jody? Or
if you're talking, this legislation is just going to make it easier for them to form. When unions form, they come to us with terms, and those terms could include mandatory overtime rates, double time, that kind of thing. We can't foresee that. We're just saying that's a possibility. When you have non-represented employees, they don't have that kind of agreement to fall back on. So we can affect their compensation easier than we can affect the compensation of unionized members.
Okay.
Payon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does this affect individuals or a group of individuals who get together? In other words, if there's one person that says, well, gee, I'm not really covered, but I'd like to join this union, or I'd like to form my own union, but it looks like it's a union of 1, 3 people, 5 people, something like that. The reason I ask is that there have been a number of people that I've talked to that wish they could join a union. And I say that without regard for my support or opposition to government unions, but it just doesn't seem fair that some people can join, other people can't. And I don't even know how you would get organized for something like this without a major effort. I mean, if there are 100 people in the city that fall within a category that they're not represented right now, I mean, how on earth do you get them together? You got 2 out at the water plant. You got 3 at City Hall. You got 2 at Park and Recs. I mean, I'm not even sure the applicability of this. Could somebody answer that for me?
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, this only affects the formation of new unions that we don't already have. So if there's positions that want to come into existing unions, they're not affected by this. There's a process already in place for them. So this would only be for the formation of a brand new union that doesn't already exist. And yeah, who knows how that might happen? You know, maybe all of the engineers get together and say, we want to form a Teamster union. Who knows? But it's only for that, for the formation of a brand new union.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Reluctantly, aye.
Okay. Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Chandemeyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
That motion carries.
Okay, Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is O-4520 Audit Committee for the purpose of clarifying the responsibilities of the audit committee members, specifying reporting requirements, providing for external and internal reporting services, and other items.
Is there a motion to adopt O-45-20 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have some proposed amendments, 1 through 5 and then 6 through 7 from Alderwoman Tierney. Would you like to move those, Alderwoman Tierney?
Yeah, I'd like to move them together if possible. That would be amendments 1 through 5. And I motion to approve those if someone wants to second, and then we discuss.
Second. Second.
A second, Ellie? Yeah. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, elaborate. Okay, the amendment 1, the base ordinance had both the city manager and the finance director attend the meetings, and this simply says that either or can attend. Amendment 2, and let me just for background, these amendments were all reviewed by the audit committee and the chair, Alderman Payon. Amendment 2 clarifies it to meet code. The audit and auditing and comply with auditing standards. They don't require any communications to the audit committee. So that the communication should be with the city council, not the audit committee. So that needed to be clarified per code. And then there was a grammatic error as well. So it basically says all external auditors, not in-house, but external auditors shall report findings directly to the audit committee. And then all external auditors shall provide to the audit committee a copy of all required communications to the city council. On 3, it said the city department subject to the audit shall brief the audit committee within 90 days. We changed that to read that the city department subject to the audit, such as Parks and Recs, et cetera, shall provide a written response to the external auditors and recommendations no less than, what was the date? We agreed to 60 days so that it would be quicker than our first one. And then Amendment 4, the same logic as as the previous one. Let's see, 4 was the same comment as above. The city department subject to the audit shall provide a written response to the audit report within 60 days. And then Amendment 5, per code, we changed this so that because there's no requirement for the audit to go before the finance committee, it will go directly to the city council. And so that's that. I think Rob had the other amendments.
Alderman Savage? I have these down as 6 and 7 as Tierney amendments. Are they your amendments, Alderman Savage?
Yeah, I thought you only moved 1 through 5.
Yeah, we have to vote on 1 through 5.
Okay, sorry, Ellie. I thought they're both labelled as yours. So let's vote through 1 through 5. We have a first and a second onto the Tierney amendments. All those in favour with a show of hands say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Can we move the Savage amendments right now?
Yes. I'll move Savage amendments 6 through 7.
Second.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to give background on these, so my intention, first of all, I want to say, I think this legislation overall is I think the improvements that are laid out are absolutely needed. And I do want to thank Alderman Payon for putting it together. I think the role that this committee plays could be a really great asset for the council. And I do support the legislation. I just had a couple of amendments that would alter its makeup. you know, this is not a standing committee. It's actually more like a commission. As I stated with the housing committee that was turned into a commission a few meetings back, I feel it's good governance to get the alderpersons off the commissions, especially in this case when there are 3 alderpersons who serve on it. Because by removing the 3 alderpersons, I would open it up to allow civilian, more regular citizens to serve on the board, and also remove any kind of potential politics from interfering. I don't think, and I'm not saying that's been a problem with this board at all, with this committee at all, but I just think it's good governance to try to keep that separation. But you know, all that said, I'll support this legislation whether or not these amendments pass or not. So I guess going a little further, that amendment number 6, first one, just simply states that the audit committee is appointed with 4 citizens and 1 member selected by the Financial Advisory Commission. And then the 7th amendment would strike the audit committee and substitute audit commission.
Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since Alderman Payon is the chair of our audit committee, I'd like to hear from him regarding these 2 amendments from Alderman Savage.
Yeah, I don't think either one of them is needed, especially the first one. We already have an order where we apply roughly the same formula to civilians that are on the commission. We stack them so we don't have an inordinate number of vacancies at any given time. In terms of, you know, getting aldermen off the committee, I don't think that that's appropriate at this time. We're already making some changes. While I may share my colleague from Ward 7's idea that eventually that may very well be what we do, you know, within a few years down the road, but now's not the time. We're still a baby committee, and we have growing pains. And I think it's much better that we have 3 representatives of the council on the committee for the time being. In terms of whether you call it a committee or a commission, I don't think there is any practical difference between the 2. Perhaps the city attorney can tell us if there's any pragmatic difference in the title of what's now the committee. I mean, that's one that, frankly, I don't really care that much one way or the other unless there's something I'm not seeing here.
Mr. City Attorney?
The only difference is your practice. You have a practice of boards and commissions being different than committees. Committees is referred to mostly as the standing committees of the council. Commissions and boards tend to be the boards and commissions comprised primarily, if not solely, of citizen members.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Mr. Mayor, you have to realize that the committee has been over this thing time and time again. As a matter of fact, a number of the changes that we've come up with actually came from committee members, civilian committee members, that have way more expertise in these matters than I do personally. I can't speak for my 2 city council colleagues, but this is what they want. Hey, I don't know how else to put it. They know what they're doing, and they've done a superb job for the most part and deserve a lot of credit. And I think in this particular case, some of the major changes, it was they who came up with it. And I simply, wrote it down and presented it, a large part of it. So I think that this represents a change in direction to some extent. We still have the same responsibilities we've always had on the audit committee. I think when we put this together, and Ross was around for this, as was Alderwoman Finlayson, that we had in mind that we'd be going over numbers and crunching numbers all the time. Well, what we found is that, to be honest, the type of audit that we had in mind to do is way beyond the means of the audit committee budget year in, year out. Now, occasionally we have enough money for it, but and for some of the departments, but not for the ones that really affect us a lot. So I think that this is something that we need. It is an opportunity for the city to really measure whether or not we do a good job. And if we don't in any given program or department, we need to know about it. The finance committee needs to know about it. And let me tell you, we put together a group of people that have done this for a long time in the private sector. And I'm really anxious to get going on this. I certainly hope and humbly request that my colleagues support this and we can really get to work. We're going to work on training. We actually will be putting out an RFP to have somebody come in and train department heads on how to write up their performance. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. Performance standards, and they'll present to the committee too on how to read these and interpret them. It's really, to me, I'm quite excited about it, and I haven't always been able to say that about the process involved with the committee over the 4 years, roughly three to 4 years we've been in existence. So I strongly urge my colleagues to support this. Thank you.
So I had Alderman Arnett, then Alderman Pendell Charles, and Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Several points of information. One, I received an email from Alderman Littman, who was the person that put together the original legislation. He urges that the council consider keeping council members on the committee. I would like to ask Director Gerald to speak to this in a minute, because unlike other commissions, this body does have a budget. I don't think any of our other boards or commissions do, and I think that's what Director Gerald pointed out to us in committee, that it would be appropriate to have this remain as a council committee rather than a commission of citizens. I find appeal in both directions, but as we're now changing the role of this committee, now still committee, to get into the performance measurement part of auditing and working on that and helping us make that more robust, there is an appeal to having council members on the committee, because we use that directly. We use that for our budget process. And in fact, Alderman Payon is on the finance committee that uses that. And Alderwoman Tierney is a very frequent attendee to the finance committee. I don't think Ellie missed very many of our finance committee meetings ever, but certainly not when we were deliberating the budget. So I think this has morphed a little bit from when we initially were thinking about this becoming a commission. I'm not really sure how I'm going to vote, but I think I'm kind of inclined to keep it a committee at this point. But I did want Director Gerald to say some of the same things to us that he said in the Finance Committee when we discussed this.
City Manager?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I think this is sort of a different creature than some of the other committees or commissions that we have. As Alderman Payon has mentioned, we have a very good group of what are we calling them? Civilians. It seems like a funny term to use, but the non-aldermen on this committee are very strong, and we've added a couple new people who make it even
citizens.
Yeah, citizens. Thank you. But they do have a budget, and normally the budget is $50,000 per year. This year it was cut in half because of the budget situation that we have, but it's still $25,000 that the committee manages and makes decisions on and helps us make selections of consultants. So I think there's a lot of value in having the aldermen on the committee because of that, of that accountability for the funds that are given to the committee.
Thank you, Alderman Pindell. Charles, Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to pick up on something Alderman Arnett said, and I'm going to speak from a personal growth situation. Alderman Payon is a member of the Finance Committee. I'm not. Alderwoman Tierney attends a lot of the meetings. I do not. So for me, this is an opportunity to get my toe in the water as far as understanding more about the budget and what goes on. I see our committee as a cousin to the Finance Committee. And so for me, it is extremely helpful. We have a group of residents on the committee who are extraordinarily gifted and talented when it comes to finance and budget and auditing, and I'm not. So for me, every meeting that I attend it's a growth opportunity for me, especially with Alderman Payon and Alderwoman Tierney, and Alderman Arnett sometimes attends our meetings as well. So for me, it's a big, huge plus, and I feel more a part of the budget and finance process than I ever had before. I'm not blaming anybody. That's my own personal situation, but that's how I feel about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderman Finlayson and Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I think we need to be consistent. You know, the Education Committee was moved to a commission a number of years ago, but they don't have a budget. We don't have a budget. So all commissions don't have budgets. And if I remember correctly, they were confirmed once the members of the commission were confirmed once it became a commission, as opposed to simply being a member of the committee. So, you know, if we're going to make, draw some lines between committee and commission, I think we should be consistent, whatever that decision might be. My question goes to Alderman Payon. Just for clarification, are you in opposition to both Amendment 6 and 7 of the Savage amendments?
I am, but I have to say with Amendment 7, I'm a bit indifferent, shall we say. I don't really care what you call it, as long as we keep this group together and go ahead and work in the direction that we plan on working.
Okay, thank you.
If I might, is now the time to comment on something else that you said about the budget, the committee budget?
Yep.
Okay. One thing you have to realize is that with that budget, we don't assign or commit the city in any way to spend this money or what to spend it on. We make a recommendation to the city manager. We go through RFP process the same as anybody else would in the city. And frankly, if the committee wanted to spend money, especially if it's money that isn't there, we have to go through the city manager. And if the city manager says, hey guys, I'm the money guy here, and I say no, it's not going to happen. So it's not like you have a committee that's spending the taxpayers' money however we want. It gets spent the same way that, if we were city employees and wanted to hire let's say an auditor, we go through the exact same process that the other people in the city would. So you shouldn't fear that the committee is going to show favoritism by hiring this one or that one. It's the same process as we would if we were city employees.
Thank you. Alderman Tierney.
At least essentially it is.
Thanks, cuz. Oh, wait, you're not my cousin. It's Ross and Sheila. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. I agree with the consistency argument that Alderman Savage and Alderman Gay, I'm sure, have. But in this particular case and being on the committee, I think it's important to have the few council members there because we're tasked with these performance measures, and there's a ton of interface in the government's how we operate. And coming in as a citizen, you don't know that stuff. Like, what does that department do? So I think it's very helpful that we're there to sort of to answer those questions and to guide them, at least for the next year. I think that's what Alderman Payon was saying as well. We're still on a learning curve.
Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thanks. I'm just throwing out there, I've used every single last one of these excuses 3 months ago when you guys decided to take the alder people away from the committee that I served on. Same exact situation. Older people on a committee that the committee members had more knowledge and that we were trying to learn and balance it. So, I mean, be consistent across the board. There is no difference here, except for one deals with finance, the other was dealing with housing. I mean, I learned a lot more about housing than I did on the committee because I was with housing people. So if you spend time with finance people, you learn a lot more about finance. I think there are opportunities to do that at the finance committee meetings. There was preach of double dipping when I was on the Housing and Community Development Committee. This is double dipping at its finest. You get to, if we're discussing the budget, especially, you're discussing the budget in the audit committee, you're discussing the budget in the finance committee, and then you're coming back to the full council meetings and going through the budget with us. So I think we should be consistent all across the board.
Alderman Payon?
I don't think it's fair to take it out, if you will, on the audit committee because you think there may have been a mistake made a couple of months ago on that vote. We're there, we contribute, and I don't see the situations as being the same, although I do think they're not totally different. I do agree with you to that extent, but two wrongs don't make a right.
Mr. City Manager, can you talk to me about what will this look like if we vote it up? How long will it take to replace people on a?
Well, I think that, so you're saying if you vote to take the council members, the aldermen off of the committee,
right?
I think they have enough to continue to function, on some level, and we would immediately start looking for additional people to replace the three. We'd have to decide how many we want, if we want to stick with the same number of people on the committee or have a lesser number. But there's a core of people there that could continue to operate, I think, until we replace the other three members.
Alderman Payon.
Mr. Mayor, I would ask that we take amendments 1 through 5 together and then 6 and 7 together.
Yep, we're on 6 and 7 now.
Yes, yep. I mean when we vote on the amendments.
Okay, we voted on 1 and 5.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. How would the process work as far as relaying information to the full council? With the Education Commission, you have a liaison to the council. That would be me. Would there still be a liaison? Would we count on our city manager or our finance director to be responsible for relaying information back to the council?
Mr. City Manager?
So my anticipation is it would work a lot like the FAC does today, that will report to the Finance Committee. And, if desired, provide periodic reports as well to the full council at work sessions. But I think the primary reporting would be to the Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Annette.
I would point out that we just amended in Alderwoman Tierney's amendments that it not report to the Finance Committee, but to the council at large. I personally like the idea of it going both places. I don't think there's anything wrong with it coming to the council at large, but I do agree with Alderwoman Pendle Charles' notion of cousins. And in fact, we cousins are coming over for dinner some night. But I think I like City Manager Gerald's notion that it should come to the Finance Committee. A lot of this we are working hand in glove on. So I really would like to go back and reconsider Amendment 5 and the Tierney amendments, because I think it should be made both, not an either or, both to the Finance Committee and to the council at large. But that's not what we're discussing right now.
Pound?
Actually, I do report. Well, under this legislation, it would be annually, but as of right now, I report quarterly to the council, and I don't think anybody has exactly been hanging on my words when I've done that, but nevertheless, that we do have that, and I don't think that I don't see that as a problem. I mean, we'll report to whoever you want us to. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, no more discussion. So we have the Savage amendments 6 to 7. We can all vote on this with a show of hands. All those in favor, with a show of hands, say yes. Oh, sorry, come in. All those opposed, say no.
No.
I think we'll do a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney.
No.
Alderman Payon.
No.
Okay. Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
No.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
No.
Okay. Alderman Shandemeyer.
Aye.
She said aye. Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
If I say no loudly, does it count twice? No.
Okay. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait.
Fails.
1, 2, 3. Looks like it failed. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like the motion failed.
Okay, motion failed. Now we have, is there a motion to vote on whether amendments 1 through 5 are substantive? Q, is there a motion to adopt O-45-20 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to reconsider Tierney Amendment number 5 to change the wording to add City Council but leave Finance Committee in as the reporting line.
Gina? You can do that?
If I get a second, I can.
Second.
Excuse me, Alderman Arnett, could you repeat your motion? You want to leave City Council in and what?
I want to add City Council and leave Finance Committee in the current legislation.
Second.
Got a second on that? All those in favor say aye with a show of hands. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No.
Just didn't want to give you more work to do, Ross.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
He is a glutton.
Regina, help me here. Are we voting on the amendment now as amended?
Now, yes.
Okay. Can I get a motion on O-45-20 as amended?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor with a show of hands say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt O-45-20 on third reader?
Mr. Mayor, before we do that, can I make a comment?
Yes. Well,
I want to offer to Alderman Gay, because I really was torn about the Savage amendments. I would point out that that vote was very close, and I think it is on our minds, consistency about what we did with the Housing Committee. I still have hopes, and I think the Housing Committee is doing a great job, but I do think consistency is important. And the only margin of difference for me was that this committee does have a budget. And so I think it does make it different from all the other commissions, including the Housing Commission. But I do think we are aware of the vote we made. And I think that I'm certainly one that would be willing to come back and reconsider that with some experience under our belt. And if you want to do that together, I'd be happy to do it with you. But I think we do take consistency, and particularly how we're treating fellow colleagues, as important. So I hope you recognize the closeness of the vote on those amendments.
Alderman Pendle-Charles, I'm going to take your hand as a second for the.
No, I have a question.
But
I have a question.
I need a second while we discuss it. Can someone do a second for third reader?
I thought
I'll second it.
Thank you. Alderman Pendle-Charles.
Yeah, I have a question from Alderman Arnett. Are you also considering possibly having a housing committee have a budget as well? Is that part of your thought process?
Absolutely not. What do you think? We're made of money? I heard the kind of money they were floating around. They wanted $200,000 for 8 families.
So I don't know if that other 25 that we didn't get this year for audit, you were suggesting that it goes to Alderman Gay for housing?
Is that what you're saying? Has already spent that money.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yep. Okay. Just a thought.
Thank you, Alderman Gay.
And I think it's an excellent thought, because Ross is first, the Art in Public Places also has a budget. And so what I think should happen is that there should be an alderperson appointed to the Art in Public Places as a liaison. And I think that we should come back, split that 25 as she suggested, and give some to housing, because they will be responsible for carrying out the duties of not only the task force, but the consent decree. And they will need funds to do so. So we can handle that at a later date. I'd love to do so in the budget.
Can work on some of that legislation later. It's not what we're on now.
Alderman Finlayson, do you wanna weigh in on the Education Commission while we're on this train?
And the
dare not ask for a budget.
All right. Let's get back on point here. Thank you. We are on third reader. Can I get a roll call from Regina? Thank you. Roll call.
Oh, yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Pendle-Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Shannemeyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye. Why do you say my name with such hesitancy?
You have to realize sometimes if I stutter, you guys move around so much. I think you're over here, but you're over here, and we got to find you because I can hear you, but I can't see you. So I
What are you talking about?
That's just on Fred's own screen. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
What I look like when I walk.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is R1720. Annual Statement of Performance Standards for the purpose of approving the annual performance statements by city agencies and departments.
Is there a motion to adopt R-17-20 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have 2 amendments. Could you move the first one, Alderman Payon?
Just a moment, please, Mr. Mayor. I seem to have lost the agenda here. I'm going to need a minute to catch up. Here we go. Wait a second. I can't remember what our amendment was. Okay. I think the amendment speaks for itself. It's certainly not dramatic, just changing a word from approving to accepting. And it just seemed a better use of the English language.
Okay, and Alderman Savage, we could probably move them together. Is that okay?
You might want to do it separately just in case.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. So we've got a first and a second on the Paone Amendment 1. All those in favour, show of hands or discussion. Alderman Arnett.
So I wanted to ask Alderwoman Finlayson what she thought about the grammatical change.
That's a good feature.
I don't think we have to make it grammatically correct, though it is.
Okay, with a show of hands, Alderman Gay, you need. Okay, with a show of hands, all those in favour say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. Thank you. Would you like to move your amendment, Alderman Savage?
Yes, I'd like to move Savage Amendment 2.
Second.
Just some discussion there.
Yes, please.
The context. Yeah, so I do really apologize to my colleagues for introducing this so late, as I mentioned in the email to you. But when we had this discussion about these standards at the committee, it wasn't clear that we were able to amend this legislation because most of the content's in the attached document. And so I think that was also holding up the the city manager's office, who I think was saying that they didn't want to withdraw the legislation and because it's already been in our process for a long time. And I can understand that. But when I reread the legislation on Friday in preparation for this meeting, I saw the one clause in there that says that it's on page 1, line 35, that says the city council shall review and evaluate each statement, making revisions as are deemed advisable. So the code seems to imply that we do have some ability to revise these as we see fit. And so I contacted the law office about how to get that done. And I do want to thank them very much for getting this together last minute. But fortunately, these changes I had done a while back. But again, I never introduced them because I felt we didn't have a good way forward. All that said, I do want to hear from the city manager because I want to. Hopefully, you've had a chance to. Actually, I think now that I mentioned this, I think I forgot to copy you on this, city manager Gerald. But hopefully, you've seen a copy and there aren't any major issues. I think I would understand if there was something that gave you a lot of concern and that you wouldn't want to see included this time around. And I'd be happy to work with you to incorporate these for the next standard. But in this case, my hopefully though, what I tried to do is keep this pretty objective. And just to provide a little more context, there were a couple of environmental programs that were not mentioned in our performance standards. Those were the stormwater management, the sediment control, and the forest and tree protection. And so because those are such core programs that I think many of us get a lot of calls about, I thought it being important to have some standards and metrics in there. And I know the city manager had agreed. The only question was a matter of timing. And so, again, rather than going through all these standards, again, I tried to keep them pretty objective in terms of what's measured and some of the things we already measure anyway. But, that said, I'll answer any questions, and I would like to hear if the city manager has any kind of concerns about this or has had a chance to take a look at them.
Alderman Finlayson, would you like to finish up, David? And then Alderman Finlayson and Alderman Pendell-Charles have their hands up.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Mayor. So thank you, Alderman Savage. Yeah, I think we've been talking about these for a lot of months. You know, this has been an interesting resolution because it has to be submitted in February of each year, and we submitted this in February, and it's just now coming up for a vote. So it's been a long and sort of tortured road for this piece of legislation.
Well, we're ahead of time. February's coming up.
So what our plan was to include these, and I think we've been keeping track of the data for all of these. Jackie and I talked about these somewhat at length today about each one of these to make sure that we're okay with each, and we certainly are. These are all good performance measures that we should be tracking. Just from a sort of a bigger perspective on performance measures, we've gotten a lot of good feedback as this resolution has gone through the various committees, and we have realized in discussions with the committees, but also in discussions with the audit committee, that we still need some work on our performance standards system. So as Alderman Payon mentioned, we're putting together an RFP, and we're going to hire a consultant to provide training to the departments and some assistance on making all of the performance measures more parallel and more consistent across all the departments. Some are really, really good. Some of the departments did a great job. Some still need a little bit of work, but we're going to use that $25,000 that we have for the audit committee to hire a consultant to help with that. And they will also provide training to the audit committee members. So when the departments come in front of the audit committee, they'll be able to look for the right things and ask the right questions to make sure the performance measurement system is working the way it should. So we're going to owe another resolution in about a month. We have been keeping data for the performance measures based on this resolution. So that's what will be submitted. But then we will put together new performance measures that will go into effect probably in 2022 is what our expectation is. So that's kind of where we are. This is one of those that, you know, we submitted at a point in time and need to start using the information in the resolution to collect data on the performance data that allows us to judge how well we're doing on the performance standards. And so we've been doing that. So it's going to be a work in process as we go forward, but each year we owe the council an annual performance standard report, and we will continue to provide that. And hopefully over time, it will continue to improve. And we will include these amendment items that Alderman Savage has suggested.
Alderman Finlayson was next.
Yes. Are we taking both the Payon and Savage amendments together? Have we voted on the Payon amendments yet?
We voted on the Payon amendment already.
Okay. I'm afraid I need to hear the Savage amendments because I'm not seeing a copy of those attached in Granicus, was it?
You have to scroll up.
I don't know what that means to scroll up.
Well, do you see it listed as a PDF, R1720 Amendment 2 Savage?
No.
If you move it up, sort of.
No. I printed this out today earlier, so maybe it wasn't attached. So Rob, could you take a moment?
I could get Regina to send that to you, can we?
Or if Rob could just quickly summarize, and I know you did in part, but I was busy trying to find the verbiage of it, and I'm not finding it.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to, Mr. Mayor, do you want me to go ahead and do that?
Try to summarize it, a couple of pages.
Yeah, it's a lot to read, so Alderwoman, I'll try to. So first of all, there are three different sections. The first section is stormwater treatment, and that just creates a benchmark where, let's see, the performance measure would be listing approved grading permits and the percentage of impervious surfaces that they're treating, because each development has to keep track of that anyway in terms of how much they're treating the percentages. And maybe just compare that to our objective of treating more impervious surface than the minimums in the code, in line with a resolution we passed a couple years back. The second section is for sediment control program, and that performance measure is keeping track of the total number of projects being inspected, the total square footage, acreage of disturbance, and the frequency of inspections. And those, again, are all things that we already have in our system. It's just, I don't know if it's all compiled in the same place, though. And there's also another section for, or I'm sorry, another component for the sediment control program, and that's keeping track of the total number of violations that are found and the actions that are taken, such as if fines are issued or field correction notices, and also establishing a length of time between discovery of the violation and the resolution of the issues, just so we can try to, the standards will have the goal of making sure we have effective enforcement of the violations of our sediment control program that utilize the escalation of enforcement. The last section is the forest and tree protection. And this has a number of subsections, but the first one deals with identifying the total number of forest stand delineations that are reviewed, and the accuracy rate, because staff has to approve those and determine if they're accurate or not. And if a consultant has a number of deficiencies, they have to go back to get a new consultant. The developer has to get a new consultant, and that's already in the code. This just kind of makes it a standard that they'd keep track of. Then the second subsection under forest deals with keeping track of the number of forest conservation plans, and also similarly just looking at what the acreage of forest is that we've protected, the total that's been removed. And those, again, are numbers that we already have to provide to the Department of Natural Resources, so it's not, it shouldn't be too difficult to get that together. And then the third one under that is keeping track of the total acres of the greenway that were protected or created during the development review process. And I think that would be useful for the Conservancy Board. And the last one keeps track of the total number of street trees that are removed or maintained or protected. And this just gives us a better idea of, and also keep track of the permits that, tree permits that are issued, and the total mitigation that may be required. And this just helps us to manage the public street trees and the urban tree canopy program for the streets. And that's already things that are in the code. It's just kind of creates these standards out of those. Hopefully that helps Alderwoman, but that concludes the amendments.
I appreciate that. I'm looking again at our agenda and the legislative history. So the Environmental Matters Committee approved this with the amendments that you've just outlined. Because I'm not seeing that either, but okay.
No, these actually came up. We discussed them, but at the time we didn't think that we were able to amend this legislation, so we didn't take an action, if I recall correctly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had two questions, one for Alderman Savage and one for Alderwoman Finlayson, but I think Alderman Savage has answered it because it's concerning the legislative history where Environmental Matters had recommended unfavorably. And I'm going to assume, based on what you're telling us now, Alderman Savage, that's the answer to my question as to why.
Yeah, because we didn't want to recommend approval of the legislation with these, what we perceived as these holes in, or lack of coverage, I should say, of these environmental programs. And so, yeah, that's why we decided to recommend unfavorably.
Okay. And Alderwoman Finlayson, I noticed that rules took no action. Just curious to what happened there.
We could not get all of our questions answered, I think is the best way to put it. We were not comfortable with taking a position one way or the other. So we took a position of no action.
Are you comfortable now?
I think I am, having to hear the amendments that Alderman Savage has just outlined verbally. I think I'm comfortable. He's a member of the committee, Alderman Arnett's the other, so I trust that they are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tierney.
Yeah, I just had a question. Well, first I have to, I'm odd at Alderman Savage's effort on this with his extensive review. Is this the first year we did this where this performance measures went through the standing committees? Because I think we were sort of fumbling with it and not really given any clear directive on what our task was. And I know that, Alderman Savage felt that way and said, why am I going to, at Environmental Matters, we all thought that. We said, why are we approving this when it doesn't have what we think it should have? So I guess it's a question for the city manager on what is the role of the standing committees in this review, and should we revisit that, especially now that we're going to have a consultant develop them?
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think ultimately what we will want the council to do after we establish these performance measures as being our approved performance measures is to look at the performance and not just the measures, right? So what you should be concerned about ultimately is how are the departments doing in meeting their performance standards. But what we ended up dealing with was the measures themselves more than the data. So we're going to get the performance measures tuned up and improved to where we want them to be. As I mentioned before, some of the departments are very, very good. Some are not so good, but we need them all to be very good so that then on a going forward basis, we don't continue to change, because the real advantage of a performance measurement system is that you measure it year after year after year to see how the performance is hopefully improving, but as it is changing year over year. So that's where we need to get. Clearly, we're not quite there yet. And I think that's why the Rules Committee and we kind of struggled with this for so many months of how do we do this? We're already measuring performance based on these, but yet there was a lot of discussion of the lack of the measures being parallel, the quality being up and down, a lot of issues associated with the measures instead just the data that should be looked at.
Alderman Gay.
Yeah, I just want to add, I know this is, far from, but just he was discussing the environmental and all of that stuff. And the department, what's the title of the Department of Resiliency and what?
Well, it's not a department, it's a Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability.
Resilience and Sustainability, yeah. One of the things that I would like to see moving forward, and I think we graced over this when the confirmation process and stuff was happening, but just even here, he mentioned in his amendment like urban tree canopy, and I would like to see further partnerships made with HACA or these subsidized housing communities where environmental priorities or environmental issues can't be made a priority because they don't have the funding or, just the people in place to manage it. And I think that takes our city to another level if we include, not just, the places that have the luxury of, the tree canopy and all of this stuff, but just being inclusive all around. We can add trees in Robinwood. We can add trees in, Eastport Terrace and all that stuff. I'd like to see that conversation, and I'd like to see her be a part of that conversation too.
Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Alderman Gay, before you came onto the council, Alderman Savage and I had a couple of conversations about that as well, and planting trees in those communities. So you're right on target. So that's something I didn't necessarily pursue, but we have had those conversations about that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have the Savage Amendment 2 to R-17-20. We have a motion on that, so we'll take a vote on it now with a show of hands for Amendment 2. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Is there a motion to vote on whether the amendment to R-1720, whether they are substantive? Is there a motion to adopt R-17-20 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Shannon Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
And that resolution carries.
All right. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is R-6720, Maryland Emancipation Day, for the purpose of supporting the establishment of November 1st as Maryland Emancipation Day and generally relating to a Maryland Emancipation Day.
Point of order, what happened to the Charter Commission?
R-66.
Missed one.
Did I miss it?
My agenda's out of order if your agenda has that first.
R-6620.
R-66.
Yeah, I have that. R-6720, is it?
I'm sorry. It was left off of the my script.
I did it.
I'll get it. R-6620, Charter Revision Commission, for the purpose of appointing a commission to make a comprehensive study of the government of the city and all matters relating to said commission.
So move.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Godspeed.
All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda. Oh, is it?
I'm sorry, that's a roll call.
Next one is a roll call on.
Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
Yes.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Shannon Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm out of order here. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, now the item is R-6720 that's before you, Maryland Emancipation Day.
To a motion to adopt R-67-20 on second reader.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Anybody like to take the lead? Alderman Arnett.
Point of information, if I could, from the city attorney. This is a resolution and therefore it's a sense of the council, but it's calling for a lot of things, at least last I read it, about establishing state holidays and things like that. Is this resolution something that says we want to recognize Emancipation Day, or does this resolution have the force of law to create this as a new city holiday? And I mean, that's basically the bottom line question. Is this just a sense of the council, or is this having some force of law change?
Alderman Arnett, if I could, this is a sense of the council. There is an ordinance that I and the other co-sponsors have also put forward that we are not hearing at this meeting to make it a city holiday as well. But the one before us currently is just a resolution to get the sense of the council.
Thank you. I guess I'm having a problem with how much the agenda changes so quickly, but thank you for that clarification.
Alderman Savage had a hand up and Alderman Payon, I saw.
Yeah, I absolutely support the establishment of this holiday and the idea behind it, but I'm less certain about the creation of an official city holiday where employees are off and everything. I know that's always a very tightly negotiated thing, and And I'm also wary just of the potential fiscal impact, especially during these COVID times. And so if I'm not so certain about it in terms of the city, I'm not sure if I want to support it, this resolution, which would support the idea of creating an official state holiday. You know, so I guess that's kind of where I am right now. I definitely support the idea behind it, but it's just making it actual paid off time off is what is giving me some heartburn.
Nanette.
Thank you, Alderman Savage, because it seems you're sharing the same confusion that I am. When you look at the end of the resolution, it says it encourages the Maryland General Assembly to establish a state legal holiday, a public school holiday, bank holiday, and state holiday. I think Alderman Schandelmeyer is right. So this is just a sense of the council saying that this is a day that is deserving of recognition. And by resolution, we're encouraging these other levels of government, state government, public schools, et cetera, and private sector with bank holidays to consider that, making that a holiday, but it doesn't make it a holiday.
Correct. There is, again, an ordinance that I have put forward which would make it a city holiday, but this is not that. This is just a, hey, General Assembly, we believe you should make this a state recognized holiday. If your concerns are still for the ordinance are still relevant to the resolution, though, Alderman Savage, I do completely understand. Times are tough, budgets are tough. For my own ordinance, I am going to probably be looking at some potential amendments onto that, but yeah, the resolution is less binding. It's we encourage the state holidays.
Alderman Paone, you still needed to get on, or?
No, sir.
Okay. Alderman Tierney next.
Yeah, I have a question. I know that this isn't what is before us, but in the interest of city budget, what kind of impact does that have if it does become a holiday? I know that there was some chatter out there from our constituents.
From the ordinance, which again, this is not the ordinance. There was the one paid time off and lost productivity of employees getting the day off, along with doing a holiday pay for essential city employees who have to work through the holiday.
Okay. Do you have a dollar amount for that?
Not off the top of my head, but
it is on the fiscal note that's attached to the ordinance. I can't give it to you off the top of my head, but I can try to look it up real quick.
If you wouldn't mind, Jody. But yeah, the ordinance I can talk into more when we hear that onto some other committee meetings and other hearings. But I am open to amendments to try and address some of those potential budget impacts on the ordinance in front of us, but the resolution doesn't really have one.
Yep, and let's leave that for when we get to that point, can we?
Yes.
Thank you.
We've estimated 11,400
for the ordinance, correct? Not the resolution. Okay.
If we make this a city holiday, and then people are off and they get holiday pay, etc.
Okay. $11,000? That seems very low.
That's nothing, yeah.
That's not what we're voting on now, though. We're just voting on support.
That is the ordinance. This is the resolution.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Hold on. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Paone?
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendel Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Schandelmeyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye, and please add me as a co-sponsor.
Okay. Alderman
Yeah,
Savage?
me too.
Alderman Savage?
Abstain.
Alderman Arnett.
Again, the hesitation. Aye.
Okay, that motion carries.
Alderman Gay?
So would I be correct in assuming that to operate the city government, it cost about $11,500 a day?
No, that's the difference between what we pay people that are off versus what we pay them on a normal day.
Okay, all right.
Penalty rates or something.
I will send a calculation to the council on how we came up with the 11,400.
Guess what? We're on the last one.
Okay, Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda. Oh,
yes, sir. The next item.
Before we move out of the section of second reader, I did want to, and this is probably going to get me a lot of hate, but you know, I did want to take a vote of reconsideration on R6120. As I was in the majority, I believe I do have the right to reconsider the vote. And the reason I'd like to open it for reconsideration is because I did tell Ellie on the phone that I would support the 6-month moratorium. And I want to be, you know, consistent in my word. So what I want to do is open up the vote for reconsideration and allow Alderman Payon to make his amendment for 3 months so that we could move forward with a 3-month moratorium, because I do want to hold my word to her.
You don't have to do that.
it's okay, Regina? So that's a motion, Alderman Gay?
Yes.
A second for it, please.
Second.
And you want to put your stuff forward, Fred? 3 months?
Yes.
Don't we have to take a vote to reconsider first?
Yeah, I think we do.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's take a vote on the motion to reconsider. We got a first and a second with Alderman Gay and Alderman Payon. All those in favor of the motion to reconsider with a show of hands, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no.
Nay.
No. Okay, the ayes have it. Now, Alderman Gay.
I guess, am I just putting the original motion back on the floor?
Need a motion.
You need
the original motion
to pass R6120 as amended.
No, no. You don't. There is no R6120. You need to start with a new motion.
On us.
On second reader, yeah.
So what do I label it as then? If there's no R6120?
Tonight we voted on it on a second as a, let me see, 61, was that second reader? Yeah, it was on second reader, so we're reconsidering the action on second reader. And then we have to go
reconsidering R6120, right?
Okay, I make a motion to reconsider R6120 on second reader.
Okay.
Can we get a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
Nay.
Sorry, I've got to stay there. Sorry, I apologize. I put my hand up in the wrong spot. Okay, we have it
okay, so
on the floor now. Alderman Payon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I would move that we change the 6-month deadline to 3 months.
Okay.
For the moratorium, of course.
Alderwoman Tierney, before I second this, is this something that you are willing to accept from your original intent of the bill?
Yeah. That's a yes.
I will second Alderman Payon's motion.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. We've had a lot of discussion on this.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for it just because I want to get 3 months is nothing. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say no.
Nay.
Sorry. Okay. Next step, Regina.
Thank you, Dwan. That was very nice, Dwan.
I had to keep it heard.
No, thank you so much.
We need to adopt as amended on second reader.
Okay, can I get a motion to adopt it as amended?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt it as amended.
Okay, can I get a second? Okay.
Can I just really quickly? The government is listening. As soon as I started talking about this, I just got an email from Airbnb.
From who?
That's not the government. That's just technocrats. Come on.
Who did you get it from? I didn't know.
Airbnb.
Bruce Barano.
Okay, so now we're going to take a roll call.
Okay, and do you want a roll call, Regina?
Yeah. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles? Let me see her.
She had to recuse herself.
She left the room again.
Out of the room. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Nay.
Alderman Shannemeyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
No, but my offer still stands to help with the legislation.
Okay.
3 months will be here in no time.
Yeah, no problem.
So that resolution carries.
Okay, Mr. City
Thank you,
Attorney.
Dwan.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is legislative actions first reader, R121, condemning the attack on the U.S. Capitol building.
Is there a motion to adopt R-1-21 on first reader? Oh,
So moved.
second, please.
Second.
Alderman Shandelmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, I apologize for all the back and forth, and I apologize to our law office for sending this today. I do want to not make a habit of talking on national issues at the last minute. However, as I have explained in my emails, and I will say time and time again, this was such an unprecedented moment. The unsubstantiated allegations of voter fraud spurned by the president led to an attack on the people's house. And a police officer is dead for performing their duty. And we need to call it what it is, a fascist coup attempt. I appreciate all of my colleagues, regardless of how you will vote on this, have come out publicly condemning this riot and attack. I understand not wanting to get outside of our wheelhouse, but I do think this is important, especially with the recent rumor that armed protests may come to Annapolis, that we need to take a stand and condemn this.
Thank you, Alderman Arnett, then Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I plan to vote yes on first reader. I certainly condemn all of the scurrilous things that have happened for whatever reason. However, I would point out that our citizens have not yet seen this resolution, so I would ask that it be scheduled for a public hearing. I also think we might want to consider assigning it to a committee for evaluation, but most certainly a public hearing. I can tell you, when I sent out my pre-meeting email to my constituents, this generated an all-time high level of response of all sorts, some not too savory, even more than responses to short-term rental legislation. So I think this needs some disclosure so that citizens can at least have the opportunity to see this and express their views.
Mr. Mayor, if I could address the points of my colleague.
Alderman Schneidermeyer, yeah.
Alderman Arnett, I appreciate the input. A couple other of my colleagues, including co-sponsors of this legislation or resolution, have also requested that this get a public hearing. And although I originally wanted to get it done tonight, I agree with what they have said. The public deserves their ability to put their input in. I'm going to ask that we not bring it to our committee systems. It's just going to delay it past the points of relevancy. But I am okay with this being given in a public hearing for public input.
Thank you, Alderman. I only asked for it to be scheduled for a public hearing.
I am amendable to that and would support that.
Okay. Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, just on several levels, I want to respond. I could respond, but I'm just going to respond on two. Number one, as the council's public safety standing committee chair, I'd like to respond from that level that our law enforcement officers at that time, even though they're not our Annapolis law enforcement officers, but just supporting them and the death of the one officer at this event. And number two, I see this resolution in ways that we can be supportive of our colleagues in the House of Representatives as well as in the Senate. They are our colleagues, our counterparts, and I think based on what we've heard and seen, what they went through, I see this as being supportive of them and all of us being family, and I use the word cousins again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderman Tierney.
Yeah, I just want to say that what was really important for me to express in this was how we acknowledge how powerful our voice could be to a detriment. I speak specifically where Brooks says that the lies were exasperated by politicians. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge how powerful our voice can be in a derogatory way.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I am glad that we're doing this. It's not taking up a huge amount of our time, unlike short-term rental legislation. But I do feel like it's not the time to remain silent. I've seen all kinds of groups speak out. I've seen obviously plenty of African-American organizations because this obviously was a racial issue as well, a component to all of this is what happened. But I've also seen a number of environmental organizations speak out, climate organizations, and a lot of others. This is really on a lot of people's minds, but I think it's good because I think people are realizing that we're all put at risk if we allow our democracy to be challenged in this way. That's why I do feel like it's important that we are getting our voice out there. So thank you to Alderman Schneidermeyer as well for leading the charge on this.
Thank you, Alderman Gay.
Yeah, thanks. I definitely, just echoing the words that everyone's have already stated. I mean, I couldn't take my eyes off of the TV Wednesday. And I know for me, just being so young, for me to say I've never seen anything like this in my life, it doesn't mean much. But across the board, people had never seen anything like this. And I thought it was critical that we speak up in some way. I wasn't sure how. I was so glad that Alderman Schneidermeyer, took the effort to put this together, because as a Black male first, I obviously wanted to say something. But as a Black male who's also a legislator, I wanted to say something as well. But I didn't find it my place, more out of fear, because you just don't, with these white nationalist groups, you don't want to speak out against anything like that, especially putting pen to paper or putting your name out there. So I think, Alderman Schneidermeyer for just stepping up, being courageous, and, doing work that is important, but I just was fearful to do out of, just the chaos that's going on in our nation and not being sure, how to operate. So I appreciate that.
I will say I have encountered some of these organizations before. In Charlottesville, I encountered the Proud Boys, was threatened with a firearm by them. In Annapolis, we had an incident about a year ago where one of those groups, Patriot Front, put their propaganda posters over town to try and intimidate our diverse community. They will push unless you stand up to them. And I believe that we need to stand up.
Thank you. We know that hate has no home in Annapolis. I'm sure we're all going to support this. I first want to let the public know that preparation is well underway with our emergency management teams, our first responders. I want to thank the National Guardsmen that have been called up. So we are preparing. We will not tolerate what we saw in the Capitol happening in our city. There's great coordination between the state, the county, and the city, and we're ready. So let us all take a vote on this. All those in favor with a show of hands or two hands, say aye.
First reader, right?
Yes.
Yes, Alderman Payon. This I am just going to ask that this be done first reader tonight, so we get a public hearing at the next meeting.
I'll protect you, Ross.
Okay. Motion passes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry. Just can I also state? So can this get on for a public hearing at the next meeting, but also for second reader and third reader at the next meeting? Can we create a legislative action?
You have to do it at the meeting, right?
Okay. Well, I'll just give the law office a heads up that I'll be looking to do that. Thank you.
I'm a push for that.
Thank you. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the statement you just made is an important one. I can't tell you how many people have written to me and called me with the reports today, but even before that from the FBI, that all state capitals are now under threat over the next few days or weeks, probably for the rest of our lives with these people. But I think it would be important to issue in your name some kind of a statement assuring our citizens that we are aware of the threats and we're on top of it. We do live in a capital city, and we are going to be subject to this kind of absurdity for a while, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
I believe you've already put out a statement on that, Mr. Mayor, correct?
Yeah, there was a press release today.
Oh, on actually protecting the Capitol ground? Okay. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, from Mitchell.
Nobody brought it to me.
That's all we're talking about. Thank you. Okay, thank you all. Mr. City Attorney, next item on the agenda.
The agenda is complete, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I move that we adjourn.
Anything else for good order before Alderman Payon?
Yes.
Alderman Gay.
I am so pleased that the agenda was packed tonight. I feel like a good lawmaker.
You're frozen
tonight, so I'm pleased about that.
Did our work.
Hey, and Alabama's up.
Yeah, what a surprise.
35-17 at the half.
Fred, can you say what Bill Belichick did today?
Yes, he turned down the Medal of Freedom.
From Trump.
Whoa, all right. Whoa, my man. I like it. Whoa.
That's a good for the order.
Alderman Payon.
I move that we adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
We get a second.
Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All those in favor, good to be back with everybody. Happy New Year. It's going to be a great one. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.